Good afternoon, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. Welcome to Women Leading Globally in Cyber, a flagship International Women's Week event hosted by Invest Ottawa in partnership with Fortinet. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. My name is Sonia Shorey, and I have the privilege of serving as the Vice President, Strategy, Marketing, and Communications with Invest Ottawa. I'm honored, very honored today to be joined by my friend and colleague, Sophia Leong, Co-Chair of Women in Innovation. Welcome, Sophia.
Thank you, Sonia. It's such an exciting time for all of us to be together. And I know that everyone is going to absolutely love this session. It's going to be so impactful. And we're so honored to have such an incredible lineup of amazing women leaders today. I know we're going to be talking about a lot of things, but I really, Sonia, wants to highlight two things, if you don't mind. Number one, we're going to learn from our amazing women leaders, the State of Union, when it comes to cybersecurity. And I think with current global events, it's more acute. And hopefully we're going to start looking at also opportunities and threats and really good big ideas. We've often talked about the 3.5 million cybersecurity jobs that are vacant. Let's look at that actively in terms of how to address it. And with the increased connectivity in our workplace and the way that we live, that number is under pressure. So we're going to address a lot of that and also look at it through the lens of diversity and inclusion, which is all about International Women's Week, right? And Sonia, I think to maximize our reach and impact today, I believe we're recording the sessions and we're going to be promoting it widely. So over to you before I introduce Rita Elma.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Today is really all about maximizing our reach and impact. And before we invite Rita to come forward, I would like to say our hearts, prayers, and thoughts are with the people of Ukraine and everyone who is suffering. We've had a great deal of pain here in our community in the capital, across Canada, and around so many parts of the world. We are with you. We stand united, and our hearts are with you always. Rita, it would be our honor to have you come forward and deliver our land acknowledgement. Welcome to Rita Alma, our diversity inclusion strategist at Invest Ottawa.
Thanks so much, Sonia. Can you hear me okay?
We hear you perfectly.
Okay. So here at Invest Ottawa, our work takes place on the traditional and unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. And unceded means that these lands, which we now call Ottawa, were never signed away by the Anishinaabe people and inhabited them before Europeans settled in North America. In other words, this land was stolen. So why do I say this? Well, it starts with admitting the truth, which is what Indigenous leaders have been calling on non-Indigenous people to do. And as we admit the truth, we can then turn our attention away from denying and pretending and onto correcting and reconciling. I thought that for this event, I would do a little bit of research and encourage you to do the same for wherever you're coming from, to learn about whose land, who are the original inhabitants on the land that you're on, and what are the contemporary struggles of those communities in those areas. So, for example, in Ottawa, the Algonquin people are currently in negotiation conversations with the Government of Canada and Ontario to establish a treaty that will provide certainty about the ownership, use, and management of land and natural resources for the Algonquins and everyone else in the settlement area. And this is important because it'll remove the barriers to economic growth created by existing uncertainties and contribute to a more stable social, political, and economic environment with greater potential for regional economic development, jobs, and growth. And lastly, I just want to say that thinking about the land and what the struggles are around land claims with the Indigenous people who are the original inhabitants of wherever you are is especially important in a time where we're in a moment where following and backing the leadership of Indigenous people and Indigenous communities is particularly important because of the ways in which these communities have modeled sustainable living and caring for everyone in a time in increasing global crisis. Thanks so much, everyone. And I believe that there are some resources that are to be posted in the chat for you to learn more about how you can support. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Rita, for being a special part of today. You know that we're honored to have you as a member of our team and our community. And together, we truly do come together as a regional, national, and global community to strengthen our cybersecurity industry. And it's truly been never more important. The challenges that we face, they're not simply labor gaps, they're gender and diversity gaps. Research from Cybersecurity Ventures in 2019 projected that women make up just 20% of the global cybersecurity workforce. This is a risk that threatens our collective long-term competitiveness, prosperity, and security as a global society.
Sonia, thank you for taking the moment to say a few words on the global events that is affecting our Ukrainian brothers and sisters. I think we live in such an unpredictable world. The world is extremely volatile, is very uncertain, is complex, and is filled with ambiguity. And also, as we increase connectivity, we look at the impact of Industry 4.0, we are really primed for more and more sophisticated cyber threats. Obviously, we'll look at opportunities too. However, increasingly more and more cyber threats and attacks, given our legacy infrastructures, right? So this added the need to modernize our infrastructure, really increase the pressure on more and more cybersecurity professionals. And we really look forward to a very dynamic and also insightful virtual event today. Before we get to the first session, I would want to remind all our attendees to put in as many questions as possible in our chat box. We're going to monitor it. But also, given the fact that it is from 1 to 4, we've also incorporated some health breaks. There's going to be 5 minutes in between of this session, an opportunity for us to do health break, or for some of us just to really stretch our bodies. Sonia, with that in mind, I'm going to hand it over to you to start the first session.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. It's now my great pleasure to launch today's event with our opening keynote panel on the State of the Union in Cybersecurity, Global Perspectives on Innovation, Technology, and Policy Today and Tomorrow. It's my honor to welcome leaders from here in Canada's capital, across our country, and the United States for this important discussion. Please join me in welcoming our esteemed panelists to our virtual stage. Welcome, everyone. I've had the incredible honor of collaborating with the leaders that you see on our stage today. There's Faye. Over the course of the last few weeks, I could never do them justice. They are all so accomplished, and they are leaders in their field, and they are having an incredible impact on our society. I'm going to invite each of our leaders today to introduce themselves and share the most memorable moment of your cyber career and leadership journey to date to begin our discussion. Nancy, you're right beside me in the screen, so I'm going to begin with you. Welcome, Nancy.
Welcome. Thank you so much for inviting me on this panel. That's amazing. Yes, so my name is Nancy Gariché. I'm now a security advocate, open source security advocate at GitHub Security Lab. I've been in the government for about 10 years before that. As a senior cybersecurity analyst. So in my career, the moment that really touches me the most is really the impact in the community and my involvement in the community, and hearing back from people that have helped or that I've connected with during all those years, and see them progress through their career and see them evolve in their journey. So that's really my best memory of it all.
Amazing. And what an incredible contribution. Thank you so much for being with us. Steve Onions introduced us, so I want to do a very special shout out to my colleague Steve, who leads our cyber portfolio. Welcome, Claire. How are you?
I am wonderful, and I'm coming to you from Spain, where I have been attending Mobile World Congress with the telecom industry, and they are talking all about cybersecurity, I have to tell you. So thank you to Invest Ottawa for inviting me to be a part of this. I'm Claire Rosso. I'm the CEO of ISC Squared. We are the world's largest association of certified cybersecurity professionals, best known for CISSP. If I were to pick a moment, so my cyber career is actually relatively short compared to some of my magnificent peers here. of 17 months. So it could be the moment that I became the CEO of ISC Squared, but I really think for me, the moment was when we as organizations shifted the conversation from talking about there being a workforce gap in cybersecurity to talking about what actions were we going to take to close that workforce gap, and how diversity, equity, and inclusion were key elements to us doing just that. So that's probably a highlight for me.
Amazing. And of course, I came to know you through the brilliant research that your organization is publishing on this very imperative. So we're very excited to have you on our stage today. Welcome, Elena, coming to us from the capital region, I'll call it broadly.
Hi, Sonia. Thanks, everybody. Ladies, I am just very pleased to be here with you today. I am riding the wave of your success in security, so thanks very much. I just want to give a quick shout out to the people of Ukraine. We have a colleague who is Ukrainian. His family's still over there. Evgen, I hope you're doing well. And we also have some subcontractors who are working from Ukraine. And it speaks to the resiliency of these people when they showed up for work on Monday. We're just in awe of them, and we wish them the very best. So, folks, I am proof that you do not need to be a cybersecurity expert to get into cybersecurity. I started my career in the Canadian Navy, migrated over to defense and security. And 5 years ago, I was at a Crown corporation heading up the IT capital program. I saw firsthand the cost, the complexity, scope, and the amount of resources that you need to build that complete layer of security stack to defend yourself against cyber criminals, cyber attacks. And I sat there wondering, how on earth can the 98% of Canadian organizations get into that game of layered defense when they don't have the budget that mid-sized organizations have? Fortunately, I ran into some like-minded folks. They were frustrated with the complexity of the tools and the effort and cost as well. And 5 years ago, we formed our company, Cyber Defense Corporation, or CyDef for short. And we provide monitoring on endpoints. And we do that by simplifying the monitoring equation and leveraging cloud technology. And we have our own patents to boot. So that was the TSN turning point for me, Sonia.
Amazing. Thank you for being a role model in our ecosystem. We're thrilled to have you on our virtual stage today, Elena. Welcome, Rachel, coming to us from Toronto. Thank you so much for being a part of today. Oh, I think you might be on mute. There's the tagline of the pandemic.
Okay.
Yes, indeed.
Of course. Of course, one of us had to do it, right? Yes, I'm coming you from Toronto. I currently work for Manulife, which is an insurance firm that also provides benefits to employers. We operate as John Hancock in the United States, and we have several, quite a large footprint in Asia as well. My journey and my most memorable moment, I think, in cybersecurity, I kind of shifted roles in my very early 30s, coming from the media world, advertising and magazines, and made a move into tech to start. That was my plan. Landed in cybersecurity. And of course, when I landed there, not long after was, if any of you remember, there was a SQL slammer. This was the first start of these huge viruses. And I thought, what the heck is going on there? Right. And the flurry of activity made me more curious to learn what cyber was all about, because we didn't even call it that back then. But what I found through my career is there was just so much to learn that I just kept going. And that was my journey. And there's still more to learn today.
Amazing. We're excited to hear your perspectives on behalf of Manulife. A great industry. It's going to be so exciting today, having such diversity across the verticals. Faye, welcome. I would be remiss if I didn't thank Grant Corville from BlackBerry QNX for facilitating this great introduction. We're thrilled to have you on our stage today.
Thank you. It is such a pleasure to be here with such dynamic women and women that have really made a difference in cybersecurity. My background is I am actually a network systems person, so I have a long and varied career, but I came from Boeing, the Boeing company. And of course, as you can imagine, we worried about the security of the aircraft. And when I saw what happened in the automotive industry as I was retiring from Boeing, I thought, well, here's another industry that really needs help. And there was a major attack of a Jeep on a highway going at 70 miles an hour, where basically the hackers were able to take over that Jeep and change things like the heat and the music level and so forth. And so recognizing that there were more lines of code in an actual automobile than there are in a fighter jet, I was pretty stunned and amazed at this incredible industry called automotive. So I was really excited to join the group about 6 years ago, and our membership has grown quite a bit, and we're really excited about our next steps.
Amazing. And of course, the reason I'm personally so excited you're with us, we have ARIX.0, our R&D complex dedicated to smart mobility, connectivity, and autonomy. So we will be learning from you as an organization as well. So it's just fantastic. What an incredible collection of leaders from a very diverse array of verticals. I'm really excited to jump in and hear from each of you from your perspective on the state of cybersecurity, the state of the union, the significant technology, market shifts, challenges, anything seismic that's happening that's really impacting you and your stakeholders that you think would set the stage for our discussion today. Elena, you and I have had some excellent chats, particularly on policy and procurement and things of this ilk. I would love for you to kick us off.
Thanks, Sonia. So kicking off the conversation about trends. Oh, great. There's Claire. She's back. Wonderful. We're just getting into trends, Claire. And so from my perspective, and as a company that provides detection and response, what we've seen from the pandemic as we move to a remote workforce, the castle, folks, is gone. That castle that you could defend, build the wall around, put the moat in front of the wall, it doesn't exist anymore. And from our perspective, the battleground is the endpoint device, specifically the one that employees use. Because as we've seen, and I'm going to quote Cybersecurity Ventures as well, 80% of attacks are a result of human error. Phishing emails, we've all heard that. That castle is gone. That means the threat surface has expanded, and ransomware is on the rise. It is big business. In a few years' time, it'll be, if it was an economy, the cost for cybercrime will be the third largest economy in the world. And that's what, the thing that strikes me the most is, you don't need to be a cybersecurity expert or a nation state to become a criminal. If ransomware as a service is the real thing, it is a real concern. People can just go out and rent the technology to do bad things. And that's what we're faced with right now. Small and medium-sized businesses don't have the layered security in place. They are the most targeted and least secure. And that's the trend that we're seeing from CyDev's perspective.
And I know it's one that you're addressing as well. So we will certainly come back to you to hear about some of the ways in which you're bringing forward solutions. Nancy, what are you seeing from your perspective?
From my perspective, it's been recently we've seen incident in the media about how open source affects all industries. I remember I've been in cybersecurity for a while, and I remember the government, private industry saying, oh, we don't want to use open source because we don't know who's behind it. There's a lot of risk into it. But we're at a point right now where nobody can say they're not using open source. Everybody's using it, even sometimes without even knowing it. And we also realized that there's no system, there's no funding to secure that ecosystem. And that's really something that we should really take time to think about and to put our resources and energy together to see how we can secure that ecosystem that we all depend on, whatever industry we're in. So yeah, if we could give it some attention.
Excellent.
And resources.
I'm passionate about learning more about that and how we can do that safely and securely with your leadership and guidance, and award-winning. I know 2021 award winner here in Canada. So sincere congratulations on that well-deserved recognition as well, Nancy.
Thank you so much.
Faye, the automotive sector, intelligent transportation, anything CAV, connected and autonomous vehicle, cybersecurity is the pivotal question and challenge that I know so many companies and innovators are addressing. What are you seeing on behalf of ISEC? Oh, you're on mute, Faye. goodness, that darn slogan comes back again.
Sorry about that. Yeah, as Elena mentioned, we see the attacks really being increased, right? And if you look at ransomware in particular, ransomware has gone up over 450% in the last 2 years since COVID started. And in fact, this week alone, if you were watching the news, you saw that Toyota was hit and they had to close down their operations in Japan due to a ransomware attack on one of their suppliers. And so when you're doing just-in-time manufacturing, which is what Toyota does, this really creates a dynamic where if they hit the little guy, they can close down the big guy. And we saw that happen in real time this week. It is a challenge across our industry and many industries as well. And we have to really work to educate people on how does ransomware happen, through to how do we defend against it, because it's not if, but when we get attacked. We see other forms of attack clearly. There's a ton of phishing. In fact, in the last 3 weeks, the amount of phishing I have personally experienced has almost tripled. Don't know why. Even my staff are seeing it. So a lot of activity are going on out there, and I think a lot of that they're taking advantage of the current situation with what's going on between Ukraine and Russia. Not to say that this is mostly Russian, but I suspect that there's many bad actors that see an opportunity and therefore they decide to take an advantage of it. And so this is increased as well. And we have other things that are happening, but I think those are the really two large areas that we wanted to talk about.
It's such a critical area for the automotive sector to address, and I know new solutions are always needed. So we're looking forward to diving into that question next. Rachel, you represent the insurance industry. You calculate risk is the heart of the business for our insurance sector. What are you seeing in terms of trends, particularly given the overlay of the pandemic?
I think the trends that I can call out are similar to what Faye and Elaine are saying, and it's related to our interconnectedness and accepting that no matter how big or small we are, we have partners, business partners, we have vendors that we work with, and that interconnectedness, the risks associated with that have been heightened. And you can see that from not just the procurement side, but also customers, institutional customers. They have their own programs, so they're well aware and want to ask any of their suppliers. We ask our suppliers the same thing. Have you been affected by the recent X? Right. And the questions come back to us and the same kind of thing. And then on top of that, the global nature of business today, no matter how big or small you are, you could be a small business, but have a vendor that's in Asia or Europe or something like that. It's that interconnectedness and the risk that we are all faced with and have to manage.
And that risk is growing, I know, particularly with the rate at which we're using digital information, digital devices. I think you've all spoken to that, given the challenges with the pandemic and the increasing reliance on that flow. Claire, I'm really excited to hear from you being at World Mobile Congress. I'm certain you have many, many inspirational talks and people that you've spoken with, coupled with all the research, the wealth of research and the depth of knowledge your organization brings. What are you seeing?
Okay, so I want to share something. I want to share something that I thought it's so simple and so beautiful. I was talking to a gentleman who works for the National Cybersecurity Center for the UK the other day, and we were specifically talking about what are we going to do about elevating the awareness of small business. And he said, you know what? And I said, we need a slogan. We need to be able to simplify it into a simple message. And he said, I got it. He said, keep it simple, or do the simple stuff. Do the simple stuff, right? Okay, so now that was my, wow, that's motivating. That's great. Now let me tell you what's happening. So we talk about there not being enough cybersecurity professionals globally. There's a known deficit of almost 3 million cybersecurity professionals. When we did our workforce day last year, we asked them for the first time, what happens because you don't have enough cybersecurity professionals. And this is what they told us. 32% said we have misconfigured systems. 30% said we don't have enough time for proper risk assessment and management. 29% said we're slow to patch critical systems. 28% said because we don't have enough people, we have oversights in our process and our procedure. 27% said we are not able to do the threat hunting that we need to be doing. And 27% also said we have rushed deployments. And so at this point, I would defer to the talented women here to tell you what happens when your organization has that kind of circumstance going on.
That data is so compelling, and I would love to be able to share with our audience the research that you've compiled. And so we will send that out with our social media on the heels of today. It just underscores that the challenge is getting more significant. That labor gap has true productivity, performance, profitability, and security risks that are increasing consistently. The World Economic Forum has recently published a lot of data on the impact of the pandemic as well on cybersecurity. We know companies are accelerating digital transformation, employees adopting far more work, digital tools than they ever have before. And 85% of Canadian companies experienced at least one cyber attack in 2021. That statistic startled me. I thought that was far lower. I could not even imagine that it was that high. So when we think about the challenges that you've just discussed, and they span all these different sectors, what are some of the opportunities and solutions that people need to be thinking about that you're bringing to your stakeholders, to your customers, that would give us some hope and give us some tangible ways forward that would help us to address some of those risks that we've just described? Maybe I'll start with Faye.
Thank you. It's really a never-ending sense of vigilance, right? So one is education. We have to educate our workforce, our families, everyone. It's so important to educate on what this issue is and then how to address it, right? And how to mitigate it. And it's not if, but when. So then what do you do when you are attacked? How do you quickly get up and running again? What the ISAC does, we are an information sharing and analysis center, and we share information across the automotive industry. The reason we do that is that we know that threat actors use the same tactics, techniques, and procedures from one company to another because they work, because they're cheap, they have no lawyers, they have no processes, and they work, and they use those repeatedly. And so if we share as an industry, if we can share with each other, we are more than likely to help each other start to build that resiliency, build in the best practices that we need to implement in order to really protect ourselves. And so I would say building resiliency and understanding how one can get engaged in an information sharing center where they can get learning, best practices, and understanding of how to address this threat is really critical.
Excellent insight, and something we can all take heed. Nancy, what about you? What are some of the solutions? You talked about open source. How can we leverage open source communities? How are you leveraging it in your sphere of influence?
Yes. I was listening to Claire, and I was also thinking about me having a foot in the community, how I hear a lot of young people getting a lot of education in cybersecurity and trying to get jobs and not being able to to get those jobs. And then I talk to industry and saying, oh, there's not enough people. So what is going on there? I feel like the integration of this new workforce as well is a problem, right? Because I think there are people that are ready to enter the workforce and that are taking a lot of effort. I know Claire at IC Square has great training programs. There's a lot of free and paid resources to get trained into cybersecurity. There's a lot of people that are motivated to enter the industry. And I think there's a problem there of integrating them and making sure that they're ready. What I've seen is also the industry seeking senior cybersecurity analysts to enter the workforce and not ready to train, and understanding that they have to. We're at a point where we need to get them in our industry, in our organization, and get them ready by training them internally. And sometimes that's a problem, because we know some industry know they have a problem, but they don't know how to fix it. So they're looking for solutions. They're not looking to train anyone. So this problem of having it's not necessarily that we're missing people. It's we don't know how to really take advantage of the workforce that is ready, and we're not at the same stage. So that's something that I always hear, and kind of bothers me, hearing all these youth motivated people that want to enter the industry, and on the other side hearing that there's not enough cybersecurity professionals that want to enter the industry. So that's one part. And for people that again, on the open source part, for the youth that want to get hands-on experience, I think that the open source ecosystem is a great way to do that. There's a lot of work to do there. There's a lot of experienced professionals that are looking for hands, for brains that can help them secure the ecosystem. So that's a great way to get started, and to actually show to the world that you're ready to enter the industry.
Amazing. As you were speaking, I was recalling a conversation that Claire and I had with respect to the retention and building the pipeline and advancement of different professionals within this sector. I think it's a beautiful segue when we think about opportunities and solutions, Claire. I know that your organization is looking at some of the ways to increase the retention and see more women in particular advancing into more senior decision-making roles in cyber. I'd love to hear from you on that.
All right. Well, okay. So yes, retention is a huge issue. We actually see increase on the recruitment side and increase of diverse individuals moving into the profession. I think Nancy hit it right on the head that we got to make sure there's jobs. And I think there is a conversation to be had with industry about, we'll help you, but we need your commitment too. In terms of retention, we have done research in that place, and we've talked to folks and said, specifically in Canada and the US, about what is it that makes somebody's career successful initially. Well, first of all, they call out those non-technical skills of creative thinking, problem solving, ability to work individually, ability to work in a team, communications, those kinds of skills. People who have those kinds of skills and can be trained on the technical are more likely to be successful in cybersecurity and stay. Also, if people can see a pathway for them, what does their career look like? What might their career look like? If you can have those conversations with your employees early on, increases the likelihood that they will stay. A mentor, and this doesn't have to be an expensive formal program. I call it the DIY mentorship, do-it-yourself mentorship. If people can have mentors, senior people to them that they can go to, bounce ideas off, ask questions, tremendously helps increase retention. And then the other thing is, and why we need to think broadly about DEI, is people are more likely to stay in organizations where they feel that there is an opportunity for advancement for people like them. So, for example, we're talking about women here. If people enter an organization and see no women in leadership, they are less likely to stay in leadership. So organizations really need to think about and invest in their leadership development programs, and look at their leadership levels and all levels of the organization and see, am I reflecting the population that I serve?
Role models. If you can see her, you can be her. It's so critically important. We've spent a lot of time in the last couple of days during International Women's Week events speaking to this exact challenge in a host of different technology sectors. And now today in cyber, it is so true. Elena, opportunities, solutions. CyDef, I know, is doing some amazing things. I would love to hear from you on this.
Yeah, thanks very much. Rachel's point about supply chain attacks. We've all heard about the SolarWinds attack. How do you defend yourself against criminals that use trusted applications to infiltrate your network? We always go back to, we use this analogy a lot when we're talking to organizations, because cybersecurity is complex. And we always start with the analogy, look, cybersecurity is like a house. Your windows and doors have locks to keep criminal elements out. It's kind of like your perimeter security, antivirus, spam filter, and firewall. But what if somebody leaves the garage door open and a criminal gets inside? How do you know they're there? So you need cameras to detect their presence, and that's what we do. We provide that detection and response layer. In terms of recruitment, we went in deliberately with a design for our technology. We wanted to be able to use junior operators, junior analysts to run the system. That's what we've accomplished. So when Claire speaks to the recruitment process, we hire people with not only the aptitude but the attitude to fit in with the company, to grow, to learn, and that is a huge play for us, and we're seeing success with that. So we take folks with maybe 1 or 2 years of IT experience, and we can train them up in the do it yourself or the on the job training. That's what we do with our folks. In terms of companies protecting themselves, there is low-hanging fruit. You're absolutely right. You need to patch your software, and you need to patch it regularly and check it once a month that everybody's got their stuff patched. You need to enable multi-factor authentication. That's an easy win. It's a toggle, and you have that second layer for people logging into your network. You also need to have a bit of a plan. And I always say, start with what's your priority. As a company, what's the most important thing? Is it defending, making sure your website is safe where people submit orders? Is it your intellectual property, or is it your customer data? Pick something and start your defense around that. And that includes, I always include the tabletop discussions. We do this quarterly at our company. We sit in and we run a scenario. Something happens. Ilana's laptop gets ransomware attacked. What do we do? How do we respond to that? And that's what we do as a team. And that's my personal favorite, though, security awareness training. We have it implemented here at CyDef as well. Folks, it's not expensive to get that computer-based training set up, web-based. Your team can go in and take a 5-minute slideshow and learn some key factors about cybersecurity. My personal favorite, though, is the simulated phishing emails that we send as part of our training. It actually builds camaraderie across the team, and it makes us more diligent when we're reviewing emails.
Amazing. I remember you speaking to me about the scenarios you run during those noon sessions. I think that's absolutely fascinating. And we also run that same type of test with respect to phishing, where our amazing IT team actually puts us to the test. And I'm always learning. That's what I will say. Excellent. Thank you. Rachel, opportunities and solutions that you're implementing as Manulife in the insurance sector.
Well, in terms of hiring and finding talent, I think probably one of the things that we can all consider is we're always considering the balance between external hire and internal hire. And I think sometimes maybe we lose sight of the internal opportunities that you can have. So, for example, if you find somebody with the interest in cyber who's coming from the development world, knows the ins and outs of the company already. So there you've got technical knowledge about applications, and you've got institutional knowledge. That goes a long way. And the training and understanding of risks related to cybersecurity is all you have to add, right? So I think we have to take more advantage of that, because even today, I find, and I can't say this specifically to Manulife, this is a general observation in a lot of places, cybersecurity or information security is still off in its own tower. And I think we have to do overall a lot better at collaborating, because you can't pull those things apart anymore. We all have to work together with the infrastructure teams, with the development teams. Otherwise, security stays security's problem, right? And we can't do this alone.
An integrated approach, a holistic integrated approach. That's incredible guidance and advice. And you've just heard so much actionable insight. International Women's Week is truly dedicated to inspiration and actionable insight. And you've delivered some incredible knowledge and opportunities for people to enhance the security of their organizations. Talent has also emerged, of course, as one of the key challenges facing every company, every organization, particularly in the sphere. Could you share a few of the big ideas or actions that you're implementing to attract more women into either your organizations, this field, or this exciting sector that we maybe haven't touched on, that our audience could learn from you. And that could have lessons learned. We tried this, it didn't work, or we implemented this, we made a tweak and adapted, and now it's yielding better results. I'm going to let this be a very open field question and invite anyone who has some additional insight to jump in.
Maybe
I'll jump in. Oh, sorry. You want to go first?
I'll just say simply, like, just make it. I think we need to also make it look like an inviting industry. When every time there's an incident, everybody seems to be panicked. Everybody seems to not getting any sleep. It's not very inviting. I think even seeing women role model in the industry is actually, that has improved. I don't think there's a lack of them. I'm sure that we can see that there's a lot of competent women in very high position in cybersecurity. Can we do better? Of course, but I don't think that is the problem with retention or wanting to invite other newcomers into the industry. Why would they want to stay if the work conditions are not great, if it's really hard to get wins, because even simple things like we've mentioned, like patching is not easy, because when you patch, you can break. When you put 2FA, people don't use your application. So it's a very complex industry. It's a very hard industry to be in still. And you need to be passionate, and but also we need more of more people to make sure that we spread the work, that it's inviting, and not know that you don't have to put your life on hold to be part of the industry. I think part of us not being able to retain talent is seeing that it's not as inviting of an industry, and we can do better at showing that and making it a place where you can have a happy life balance, whatever that means for you.
That is excellent insight.
What I was going to mention is, I think one of the things we have to actively do is build our networks, like these events that we have here today, because I feel that we have to do more reaching out directly to people who could be potential applicants. And I say that because often I get the virtual pile of resumes, and there are no females in that pile, right? So to help that situation, finding ways to reach out to people that I may have met in other forums, to invite them to consider the position if they can, right? And that might just be a conversation, even just to get them thinking about what's next for themselves, even if they don't apply. It is somehow different, I figured out and working with HR, does the resume not have the attractive words? To Nancy's point, I think one of the other things we have to do is be better at showing the diversity of cybersecurity. It is not just about endpoints, it's not just about patching. The example of the worms in the early 2000s, SQL Slimer, for me, that stimulated my curiosity. For others, that might turn them off, right? And that's only one subset of cybersecurity. There are governance roles, risk roles where you're assessing what's happening, not necessarily, diving deep into the bits and bytes. So expanding that view so people see the breadth of security, and pairing that with reaching out to individuals and building your network and keeping that pipeline overall going, not just within your company, but within the industry.
Fantastic insight. Elena.
Yeah, so hey, can I get a vote on let's get rid of the guy in the hoodie, as the representative of the cyber criminal, right? Let's do girls in the hoodies. The hook for me, when I started talking with my colleagues back in the day, they looked at me and said, Ilana, we just want to catch bad people. They said bad guys, but I'm going with bad people. I was hooked. It is, to Nancy's point, there can be some high stress around cybersecurity, but also it's certainly feel good on this end when we're stopping some of these major malware attacks. Lemon Duck malware attack is a great example. They infiltrate your network, and they use your resources to mine cryptocurrency without your knowledge. You have no idea this is happening. And that was the December intercepted at our company. But my point is, to get in cybersecurity, for women to start looking at it, you don't need to be a cybersecurity expert. I'm just doing some quick math here. 40% of my team is female. And I can't tell you the diversity and the creativity that brings. So those are my comments. Thanks.
Intention translates into action. Amazing. Claire.
These are such wonderful recommendations. I'd like to share something that we've done when we realized that there was a need to attract more diversity into the profession, and also leap over the barriers of education and experience that say you have to come from an IT background and you have to have this certain kind of experience. And what we have done, we're actually piloting our exam right now, is we've created an entry-level certification for cybersecurity to give people who have no background in IT, technology, cybersecurity, to give them the foundations they need to move into one of those many career directions that cybersecurity has to offer. And I would encourage anyone who's listening that's interested or knows someone that's interested, reach out to me on LinkedIn and I will help hook you up with that program, because it's really important that we give everyone that quick step up to get on an equal playing field so that they can go pursue those roles in whichever part of cybersecurity excites them the most.
Amazing opportunity. Please seize that opportunity, all participants who are with us today. Faye, on behalf of Ottawa ISEC.
Yeah, I was looking at my staff and I'm about where Elena is. I think I'm almost 50% women. Now on the technical side, it's 1 out of 3. So we have to do better there. But I will say this, that, I am the leader of the organization. The role model does matter. Investing, and I have always done this, in mentoring and supporting women is very, very important. But even more important than that, it's getting involved in things like Cyber Patriot. If you're not familiar with that, that's a very widespread activity here in the U.S. through InfraGard and with the schools, the young people, starting that education early and often, and getting women and young girls to be really interested in cyber. And they get very interested. So there's a cyber program that you can go to the universities, and I've done this in my own career. As part of Boeing, certainly we were very active in promoting women in STEM and really trying to support building that background. And to Claire's point, I love the idea that, cybersecurity you can get in without a huge number of degrees, right? There's still a lot of activity and a lot of action that folks don't need. And I noticed there was a question like, how do I change career midstream, and how do I get in there? It's hard, but if you're really interested, do your studies, get your degree or get the certificate from Claire, and really, start showing how interested you are in working these items, and whatever else you can marry with what you already have in your background, because that's the power of your experience, bringing that to the table and marrying that with something that you really want to do. So I just encourage everyone to do the best that they can and continue to invest in yourself. If you're a female, invest in studying on your own, invest in the certificate program, invest in mentoring others. And I think you get a great deal out of that and will help a lot of other women.
Amazing. I see all of the comments about the resources. We will share them all, my friends. We will make sure they're available to you. We're almost at time, and I love to ask one final question, maybe 2 lines from each of you, on what most excites you about the cyber sector and industry when you look forward 5 to 10 years. You can choose anything. Who'd like to jump in? Elena.
I'll go first. What I'm excited about is that cybersecurity tools for companies of any size are becoming more of a commodity. And it's not just those enterprise or Fortune 5,000 companies that can afford layered defense. That's what truly excites me, getting it accessible to everybody so that companies can achieve what I like to call the minimum level of capability in their cybersecurity program.
Amazing. Thank you.
I think it's so important to continue with what Elena is talking about. Having cybersecurity automated in such a way that we really have the protections that we need, the understanding that we need as an industry, any industry, and being able to thwart that threat, that IoT, as I call it, the Internet of Threats, not Internet of Things, but Internet of Threat, so that we can enjoy a cyber secure environment.
Amazing. Thank you. Claire, what most excites you when you look forward?
I see this beautiful world of diverse teams, all kinds of diversity, gender diversity, racial, ethnic, neurodiversity, education background. I see this wonderful group of diverse teams. I see a workforce gap that has evaporated, and I see us successfully solving cyber threats and keeping our information, data, and systems safe and secure.
Amazing. A tapestry, a beautiful tapestry that comes together. Amazing. Nancy.
I'm with Claire on this, a change in the landscape, making sure the industry is welcoming to everyone and looks and welcoming, because there's some life-changing, I'll just end on that. Like, I've seen people getting into cybersecurity and it changes their lives, like to get a role, to get that kind of level of salary. There are great opportunities and it is accessible. And I'd like people to understand that it is possible for them. It is really accessible if you put in the time to educate yourself, to network, and to show that you're really interested and you have the hands-on experience. So I'd really like to leave that message out there, that it is possible. You just... these three things, I think: education, networking, and showing proof that you are ready to put some hands-on work into it. Connect with me, and I'll be happy to help you and connect with other resources.
Amazing. Immediate networks and mentors right here on our screen. Thank you. Rachel, you get the last word today.
I don't have anything to add to Nancy and Claire's, although I fully support everything that they said. On the other side of things, on the different size companies, what I hope to see, and I see inklings of it now, in the future, is that all companies of every size have the ability or somehow are supported by the bigger businesses in their journey for cybersecurity, because they don't have the budgets, they don't have the talent pool, but they have the same challenges, they have the same risks, right? So helping each other within the same economy that we're living in to support everybody's need to be secure.
Collaboration is an incredible note to conclude today's amazing discussion on. Thank you so much, Nancy, Elena, Claire, Faye, and Rachel. It was an amazing discussion. We are going to conclude. We're going to take 3 minutes. It was such a rich discussion. We went a couple of minutes over. I thank you all. Please, to our audience, take a few moments to stretch, grab a coffee, your favorite beverage, and come right back here. We're going to be queuing up an amazing keynote and panel that you will not want to miss. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Winterland, tell me all your secrets. Fill me in on your wildest moments. Colored trees, your yellow leaves move me. Dancing roofs, your painted red shakes the room. When I get there, I'll let my feet roll. When I get there, I'll break in your arms, I'll lose control. When I get there, I'll know the answer. Let me know when I get closer. Winterland, you're my sailing ship. Guide me in when you head for your trip. Right out of this wicked black and into bright sand. Straight towards the warm sun and deeper I will shout. Let me know when I get closer. Open up the sky for me. When you say I'll dig much deeper, I will shout.
Welcome back, everyone. I was just enjoying the music. I hope everyone did too. We really have to try to make sure that this is a live program next year. As I mentioned, hopefully you have your tea, your coffee, but let's just jump to the next one because we started with such an insightful first session. I'm really pleased to introduce Manjula Sabaraja. She's a tech reporter and CBC national columnist. Hello, Manjula, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Fantastic, lovely to see a lovely face. And I'm going to hand it on over to you to facilitate the next session.
Thank you, thank you. I'm delighted to be here. The second session of Women Leading Globally in Cyber focuses on a critical imperative, the development of a diverse and inclusive talent pipeline for the global industry, for the global cyber industry. To kick it off, I'm delighted to welcome Tia Hopkins to our virtual stage. Hello, Tia.
Hey, how are you?
It's good to have you here.
Thanks for
I
having me.
know I've heard from you before that you don't love hearing accolades about you read, but I have to
Oh
do it.
boy.
So brace yourself, because I really, I had to even shorten it because you have so many achievements. So here it is. Tia Hopkins is a field CTO and chief cyber risk strategist for eSentire, a company founded in Waterloo. We just announced that it had achieved a valuation of $1 billion. She has over 2 decades of experience in various IT and IT security roles. She's a published author, speaker, and adjunct professor of cybersecurity at Yeshiva University. She also has many awards, but I wanted to highlight 2 of them. In 2020, Tia was awarded the Software Report's Top 25 Women Leaders in Cybersecurity and the Cyber Defense Magazine's Top 100 Women in Cybersecurity. But her efforts don't stop there. She's also found the time to create and build Empower Her Cybersecurity, an organization focused on diversifying the cybersecurity talent pipeline by empowering, mentoring, and providing career opportunities for women of color. Tia, so glad you could be with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Congratulations on that unicorn valuation, by the way. What a thing to happen.
I know, it's been a fantastic ride. I'm so excited for the future of eSentire. It's going to be great.
Well, you have this line that I've heard you say that I find quite interesting. It's a personal motto of yours. It starts with learn the game. I'd love for you to share it with the audience here and to explain what the phrase means.
Sure. Yeah, my personal motto, I have a lot of them, right? A lot of isms, a lot of mottos, but one of the ones I carry with me every day and everything I do is learn the game, play the game, change the game. And I think I didn't really realize that's what I was doing early on in my career, but I am a person that likes to understand the environment that I'm in, who are the key stakeholders, how can I foster relationships, drive efficiencies cross-functionally. So that's learn. Play the game is then, get in, drive value, develop the business, create opportunities for others in the business to do the same, and then change the game. Once you've been able to add value and folks are saying your name when you're not in the room and they trust your opinion and they believe in your ideas, you have a very unique opportunity to institute change. And that was a bit of a struggle for me once I realized it, because I'm not a spotlight type of person, so to speak, which is why I was really surviving when you were reading through, trying to survive when you're reading through all those things. But I got to a point in my career where I felt like it would be irresponsible of me to not leverage the platform that I clearly had to be a voice for those that did not have a voice, and take the spotlight away from myself and use it as a light to guide the path for others. So once you get to a place where you can change the game, that's when you're looking at how can we do this better? How can we get more people involved? And I leverage that in my career, but also in trying to do my part to drive more diversity within the industry.
Well, I look at your career, just the timeline of everything that you've done, and I see someone that has sort of built this kind of castle of a career over time. You've, gone from being a technician to a coordinator to a director to a solution architect to a VP to a CTO. Talk to me about some of the challenges you faced and perhaps the greatest lessons that you've taken from these challenges.
I think, imposter syndrome is an obvious one because the way it shows up for me is I don't do anything that I do for accolades or recognition. I'm just wired to do the work that needs to be done. And I think fortunately for me, great things have come out of the things that I've done. So when I'm presented with an opportunity, it's like, oh boy, I know I've been great at doing the things I've been doing, but I think they were appreciated because they weren't my job and I was going above and beyond. And now it's my job. Am I going to excel at it now that it's an expectation and not just something nice that Tia's doing? And that happened, very on in what I consider me being shot out of a cannon in my career at eSentire. But what I learned was, well, what I had to get over, I'll start with that, was not seeing anyone that looked like me, not understanding who I can go to, who I can trust, what's a safe space, what's not. I had to turn that imposter syndrome on its head and say, look, I've got here because I'm me. I'm going to continue to be me. That seems to be working, and I'll seek feedback and continue to grow. Another thing I say to myself is even NFL players go to football practice. So I'm going to want to always get better, and I can only do that through feedback. But really what it came down to was lack of someone telling you what to do doesn't necessarily mean you're not set up for success. I took it as an opportunity. Now I don't have to do things the way someone else did it, right? I can chart my own path, and I'm put in this role because the company believes in me and my ideas and knows that I have the company's best interest at heart. And so the first time I kind of dipped my toe in the water with that and spoke up about something to my CEO that I saw as a gap, it turned into an entire program for the organization where I was able to hire individuals and build out security outcomes for customers. And that, something like that, it goes a long way for driving confidence, right? When you're not used to speaking up. So if you're not speaking up, you're not used to being heard. So when you speak up and you're like, how's this going to go? And you're heard and it turns into something incredible. It's like, wow, I should have been doing this, all along. And that's just kind of the driving force behind what I do. Is I see something, say something, but, make sure there's value in it, right? Senior leaders have a lot going on. So don't just bring problems, bring solutions with it as well. Make it easy to understand. Don't leave research for them to do. And that goes a long way for driving their confidence in you also.
What's interesting, it really plays into what you were talking about, you kind of have to go through learning the game and playing the game before you can change the game, because then you understand all of the aspects that are involved. Let's dig into some critical success factors in your journey. Talk to me about relationships. How have mentors, role models, strong networks contributed to your success?
That's a funny question for me because very, very, very early in my career, even prior to eSentire, when I was learning all about networking and leveraging social media, I was like, well, I don't know, networking, I don't even like people. I just want to be behind the keyboard, saving the world. I don't want to do that. But, the more I put myself out there, the more I realized that even if it was just one person, someone resonated with or identified with what I had to say, right? And that's how change is made. That's how you create a domino effect. And so, from a relationship perspective, relationship building is huge for me, even though that's kind of a form of networking. So that's a little strange, but it's big because that's how you learn. You go to someone and you ask them, hey, what's your day-to-day look like? And how does that look when you interact with my team? Is there anything I can do to drive efficiencies there? What that does for you is, one, you're building the relationship, but you're learning a ton about the business as well. What I find is a lot of individuals show up at work every day and they do what their job is and they do their job very well, but they never branch out and they don't understand the business. And I firmly believe that CEOs are so great at what they do because they have the big picture. They understand all the functions and how all the pieces work together. So relationship building for me is huge Because if I make a decision in a silo that I think is going to be great for my organizational unit, it may have a negative impact on another organizational unit. So I want to make sure I'm reaching out, building those bridges, building those relationships, learning the business. So I'm introducing efficiencies and not additional friction. But on the front of mentorship, sponsorship, things like that, I did not have a mentor until I got to Eastside Tire, when my CEO decided that he wanted to work with me in a mentorship capacity, and the organization ended up building a program around it. I was kind of like the pilot child, and it turned into a really great executive mentorship program for high potential employees. But prior to that, it was a lot of throwing things at the wall and seeing what stuck, which resulted in a lot of missed opportunities, a lot of wasted time, a lot of poor financial decisions and things like that. And so sometimes I sit back and say, wow, if I'd had some guidance back then, how much further along would I be? But then I take another step back and I say, well, my stepfather says, you change one thing, you change everything. And honestly, I wouldn't change anything about my journey because it landed me where I am. And that's why I'm very passionate about giving back and mentoring and showing others how to avoid some of the rocks that I tripped over. That I don't believe in shortcuts. I just believe that you do have to put in the work, but it doesn't have to be as hard as it was for me. And so anyone that I can help figure out, how to navigate, I'm always open to do that. And I think my passion really is rooted in the fact that my journey was so hard.
What's interesting, one of the things that I noticed from the past, I was listening into the past session, a great session, and that there were a lot of questions about how do I get my foot into the door? What are the certificates I have to get? You have a unique perspective on that, on what that first step should be, because typically when I speak to women who are in cybersecurity or who are trying to get into cybersecurity, the first question they ask is, what is that first course I should take? So share that perspective with us.
Sure, that's a bit of a thorn in my side when I speak to someone and they're like, yeah, ask somebody, should I get a degree? Should I get certifications? And they told me to go get this thing and go get that thing. And I, for better or worse, I tell people all the time, I'm the worst mentor you'll ever have because I'm going to be so honest. But for better or worse, I say, if you've ever asked someone what certifications you should achieve or go after, or if you should get a degree, and they answer you without asking who you are and what your desired outcomes are as a cybersecurity professional, it's bad advice because they know nothing about you. So my unique perspective on that is what you're asking is step one. What do I need to go do to get this thing that I want? But I always advise, go back to step zero. Why are you here? Why do you want to be in the cybersecurity industry? What does the ideal 9 to 5 look like for you? Or is it, you want to work after hours? What does that look like for you? What roles align to that? What transferable skills do you have? Are you actually entry level, or is there something about your background that will level you up into something that not only aligns to something you're familiar with, but not starting from zero? And I don't think a lot of that happens. I think for me, I entered the industry when cybersecurity wasn't sexy. It's sexy now. Everyone wants to do it. And so you have a lot of people showing up just trying to figure it out. There's information overload because there's so many resources available, but know your why. It's critically important, because if you're not doing it because you want to and understand why you're doing it, it'll be really difficult to be passionate about it and be motivated. And it's hard enough to wake up in the morning and do the things you're passionate about versus dragging around things that you're doing just because, or because someone else told you that you should.
No, it's interesting because you said something at the start where you said that, you wanted to be in this space because you thought you could sort of sit in the corner and get your work done and put in the hard work. And I do run into women who think that that's what they need to do, put their heads down and work. But, I look at your profile, you're a prolific speaker. You communicate a lot. You're seen as a thought leader. How important is it for women in this space to communicate their expertise outside of the workplace, be it, writing papers or speaking at events or things of that kind?
It's critically important. And there's a lot of things I could tie the point to, but I think representation for me is the one that stands out the most. A lot of things I've gone after, be it career related, sports related, whatever, it's because I saw someone I related to doing it. It's like, oh, maybe I can do that too. And so it is really important for women that have figured it out and have a platform and have the capability to get out and do those things, to show the masses that it can be done, to show women that are wondering if there's a place in this industry for them, that there is. You know, I love cybersecurity just like I love football, because in football, whether you're, 300-400 pounds or you're 100 pounds soaking wet with a pocket full of rocks, there's a place for you on the football field. And similarly in cybersecurity, whether you're coming in with the most incredible technical background mankind has ever seen, or you're coming in with great communication skills, or you're great at analyzing data, whatever that is, there's a place for you in the industry. So I do think it's really important for women to speak up and be seen and be out there. Otherwise, the industry won't look like a place for women where they can be successful. There won't be a high degree of confidence that this is a career that they should even consider.
I'm going to read you a quote that I found. It was one that was made by a cybersecurity professional, Celeste, around some of the work that your organization has done. Empower her. Here it is. The quote is, "I tell anyone who will listen that Empower Her changed my life. I went from no certificates to 7 certificates, a mentor, and a job closer to home that pays double within 1 year." Thank you, Tia. What goes through your mind when you hear that?
Empower Her has been way more successful than I ever imagined, right? When I started the org, I was like, if I reach one person, I can close the doors and be successful. So when I hear things and read things like that, I'm just like, wow, I'm getting something right. And for me, it's all about impact, and I love seeing that. And I think it's about confidence. I tell my members all the time, is about confidence. There's a lot of competent women that are not necessarily confident, and they miss out on opportunities, whereas someone that may not be as competent is confident, and so they'll gain that opportunity. And success is addictive, right? Once you try something and it works and you've got support, it's like, oh my goodness, I can do this thing. I want to do more of it. And that's the message that I preach. And so, comments like that just make me feel like I'm getting it right, and that I can't stop because we have so much work to do.
So a final minute before I bring on the rest of the panel on. Is there a change out there? I mean, you have this, it's now a sizable group of women that you're working with, but, are you seeing change out there, whether it's new opportunities, advancement, or an increase in the number of women of color that are coming into this field?
I see a change. There's a long way to go, though. It's not nearly the level of change that we need to see, but I think starting with awareness is key, right? The industry has acknowledged that we need to do something about it. The industry is doing its best to figure out what diversity means and how do we diversify the talent pipeline. So awareness and effort is what I'm seeing, because I think, women that started in the industry 10, 20 years ago did not see this, and they were the only ones showing up at conferences, and the line to the ladies room was the shortest line anywhere you ever went, because there weren't many of us there. But now there are lines at the ladies room, whether they're in the industry or trying to get into the industry. Women are showing up, and the big plus there is that companies are looking for women. And so another thing I say is, listen, the doors are starting to open. All you have to do is be ready to walk through. You have to believe in yourself, and that translates into organizations believing in you. So again, long-winded way of saying long way to go, but where we are today gives me a lot of hope.
And before, actually, there is one quick thing I have to slip in before I bring on the panel. Rashida has put up a question in the chat. She's wondering if Empower Her it also works for Canadian residents.
Absolutely.
Oh,
absolutely.
Well, okay,
yes.
There you go.
Yeah, we're international. I think we've got like.
Where can they find the organization? Give us a handle or a website.
Sure. Website is empowerhercyber.org. Twitter is at empowerhercyber.
Thank you. And that's an ideal way to transition to our broader panel discussion. It's my great pleasure to invite our fellow speakers to this virtual stage, and Sam will be helping me bring these leaders forward. Good afternoon, everyone.
Hello.
So good to have you here. I'm really excited to build on some of these opening insights that Tia's provided. For our audience listening, we'll be moving into a Q&A in a few minutes, but please, in the middle of our chat, if you want to pop questions in, if you have any insights, comments, or even recommendations from your own experience of programs that you like, changes that you like, pop it into the chat, and it gives me a way to share it with everyone as well. I'd love to read it out to everyone. So I'm going to start off by getting each of you to very briefly, within a minute each, introduce yourself, your name, your role, your organization, and really importantly, share why you have chosen cyber or a related tech field as your profession and passion. I'll start with Susannah.
Hello, everyone. My name is Susannah Al-Syed. I am a trilingual emergency management and security specialist in Toronto with over 8 years experience in roles within the public and private sector. I am the founder of Hilt International Security, a holistic security firm, and founder and CEO of Evolutes, which is an independent brand design, copy, and website development agency focusing on the security industry, but now expanding to other markets. I got into the security industry through academia, actually. So I studied political science and international studies and did my master's in disaster and emergency management, focusing my studies on pandemics. And little did I know that 2 years after graduating, I would be applying my master's in full capacity with COVID. So that is my background. That's me.
What a time to have what a time to have both of those sets of, sort of qualifications. Nutan.
Okay. My name is Nutan Becky, and I've been working for about close to 30 years in the networking and telecommunications field. I'm trained as an engineer. I've worked from before my children were born until they are now out of the house and off my payroll. And my motivations for choosing engineering and then staying with it remain the same. It's never boring. Technology moves constantly. There's always something emerging that you never dreamed of. I didn't choose cyber at the start because it didn't exist, nor did AI, ML, and nor did the software apps that are now eating the world. And for me, that's the number one attraction of the technology field. You will never stop learning. And the second one is that there is a lot of room to move, right? The technology cycle starts with the invention of something new and amazing, then comes prototyping, bringing it to life, marketing and selling your grand vision for changing the world, talking to your customers, and then eventually transitioning to something newer and better. In my career, I have worked in software development, architecture, global standards, mergers and acquisitions, pre-sales, the chief technology offices. I've run global R&D teams in 4 countries, professional services organizations, and now billion-dollar lines of businesses. I've lived in 4 countries. I've got to move around too. And now, actually just 2 weeks ago, I started as an assistant deputy minister in the Canadian government, where I hope to make a contribution from my experience to my adopted country. And I couldn't ask for more than this in a career.
Congratulations on that new role, by the way.
Thanks.
Kavya.
Yes, congratulations, Newton. And thanks, Manjula. It's such an honor to be on this panel, something that I would have never anticipated when I first moved to the United States or even made my switch to cybersecurity industry. So in 2007, I moved to the United States, and I was barely a hairstylist. Today, I'm the founder and CEO of XR Safety Initiative. That is a nonprofit with a mission to help build safe and inclusive XR ecosystems. We started with XR ecosystems. Now the industry knows there is a word for it called the metaverse, the next iteration of the internet. So since 2007, after being a hairstylist for about 5 years, I wanted to change my career, do something more substantial with my life. And I read a book called Cyber War, then figured out how to make that switch. Back then, there wasn't the overwhelming resources. So Googled stuff, went for a master's degree in network security. And this was all in Chicago. And I realized if I'm going to do tech, I should move to the Valley. Fast forward, I moved to San Francisco Bay Area, where I found myself doing third-party security advisory in 2016 for Facebook during US presidential election time. And we all kind of know that that was a very interesting time where we realized how technology can impact societies and whatnot. Right after that, I also became the head of security for Linden Lab. It is the maker of the oldest existing virtual world called Second Life. When they were also forming another virtual reality platform. So collectively, I was kind of protecting two virtual economy, one of them being the oldest existing one. And that experience collectively from Facebook and everything just pushed me to go full on, make my own table where I could potentially advise various governments. Currently, XRSI advises like over 10 plus governments. We're trying to build, diverse pipeline for emerging technologies, and a lot of different focus areas, including D&I, is just, kind of being worked on. So it's such an honor for, somebody who is just cutting hair for $10 an hour at some point to make this switch, and then now see myself on International Women's Day to be at this panel. I feel so honored, and I feel like anybody who has a dream should always just go for it, because you never know, you might be the next cyber guardian.
Thank you, Kavya. What a story. There's so much to get out of that story, and we'll come back to that in a bit. Stella. I can't seem to hear Stella.
I don't think she's on.
Oh, she's not. I don't see her. Oh, gosh. Okay. Well, we'll have to sort of catch up with her later. So Susannah, let me start with you. How would you describe the state of cyber and the technology industry today from your vantage point?
So I think that question should be actually to the ladies that do cyber. I'm a bit outside of cyber. I'm in the security industry, more physical and emergency management. So I would actually ask Tia to answer that question for me.
Tia, I'll let you take that then.
I think from my perspective, the challenge with the cybersecurity industry is how fast it moves. And I think as a species, I don't know if that's the right word, but we're used to being able to gather, collect, analyze data over time, right? We look for patterns, how to solve things. But technology is moving so fast. At the core of it is the need for organizations to maintain a competitive advantage, right? Businesses have to maintain a competitive advantage to survive. And at the root of that is the ability to innovate. You have to innovate. And so innovation means more data. It means more advanced technology. It means being agile and being able to, make changes on the fly. And that just introduces more of a challenge, right? For those of us that are securing that data and the access to that data. And it's moving so fast, we don't really have a lot of time to figure out patterns, in a way that will keep us ahead of the attacks that we're facing in the industry. So, we're at a point where we even have to figure out a way to be more agile in our processes and be able to adjust on the fly and have more confidence in the decisions that we're making, which, to kind of tie it back to why we're all here, is why diversity is so important. You need diversity of background, diversity of thought, all of the things that we're all used to talking about, because our adversaries are incredibly diverse. And if we're going to be able to keep up, we have to be able to do that as well.
Now, Newton, I'm hoping that you can help us make the jump from what Tia has just said about a foundational question on global security. Why does that lack of diversity, and specifically the lack of women's participation in the industry, pose a risk to global security?
So I'll quote, hopefully accurately, Sundar Pichai of Google. I think he said something very well, which is that a diverse mix of voices leads to better discussions, decisions, and outcomes for everyone. And now this applies everywhere, but it is critical in cybersecurity for the regions that Tia just mentioned. The problem space keeps shifting, moves very quickly, and there is no rational dialogue to be had with half of the actors in cybersecurity, like the intruders. And so women can bring a whole life of different experience to the discussion, and the cybersecurity solutions that are created with their voices will be stronger. And women also access the internet just somewhat differently and are able to then identify a different set of threats. So we need everybody from all their viewpoints, participating to get good solutions.
You know, why is it that you think that we do have that there seems to be a ton of efforts being put into increasing that talent pipeline? Susannah, perhaps I'll put this question to you. You know, this seems to be a perennial issue across multiple areas of technology. Why do you believe that we still have that gender gap in technology?
Gender gap. This is a very interesting question because, in my experience within the security industry, it hasn't been really the gender gap. It has been ageism. If you are a younger professional, you're going into the industry, you are automatically underestimated. So for me, I don't think I've faced really any difficulties as much as a woman, more as a young professional that is entering the field, because education can get you so much, but if you do not network or understand that, and Tia did a good job in explaining how networking is really powerful in cyber and in other security realms as well. So I think the gender gap is a factor of limitation, I guess, in our industry, and in cyber and in security, as my focus is security. But also ageism has also been kind of a hard thing to come through.
And how does, I find that fascinating. How does the ageism affect you? Is it that you feel that it's not getting calls back, or not being able to work at startups? Where do you see that ageism appear?
I wouldn't say startups. I think startups are more open-minded because it requires different type of skills, especially within social media and being able to approach things in a different type of scope. I think more it's within the corporate world, is that would you give someone that is, let's say, 23 years old a job, or someone that has maybe 15 years of experience? So it's really the cultural mentality of the corporation. So that's where I see the gap is.
And I just noted someone just put in the chat to me that Stella, apparently, I must have missed this earlier, that Stella was unable to join us, and I'm hoping that we can have her in on another session, because I certainly want to hear her point of view another time. Kavya, you have these, several sort of communities that you work with in cyber. Talk to me about some of the hurdles that women face that may lead to that gender gap. What are women telling you about the issues that they face, and issues that have been made worse by the pandemic?
So I'll draw on my personal experience. First of all, I totally agree with Susannah, because I remember just to draw on my personal experience, my very first job as somebody at the front line analyzing cyber attacks on the wire for Allstate Insurance required almost like 2 to 3 years experience. I was literally right out of college. And but because I was so passionate and I had a bit of a technology at the university, I did some work with tech support. I made the hiring manager believe that I can do this. And likewise, my second job when I moved to California, they needed 5 years of experience to be an analyst. I had 8 months of analyzing attacks on the wire. And so I asked the hiring manager, I'm a bit of a bold person, I'm like, what do I have to lose? I asked them, hey, a hacker sitting in the basement is 13-year-old, can bring down the servers, and you need me to, 5 years of experience for the things that you can't find answer for in Google, like cybersecurity responses. You can't just Google them and respond to this. So that put me in front of the CEO, and they moved me right over, and then fast forward. So my career in a way is being accelerated, but at the same time, exactly what Susannah said, in the corporate world, it was always like this. And I've heard this from so many women. When you look different, in fact, one of the executive person who I'm sharing a executive board with, she said she's an African-American woman, and she was literally going to take an award where somebody said, hey, could you please clean this coffee or something? Assuming that, how could she be anybody but, just somebody, a cleaner or something. Happened to me where some guy at a CISO roundtable, I was just standing there and he's like, could you please pour me a Chardonnay? And I was like, interesting. So, these experiences are so telling that our culture believes that there has to be a dude bro or some kind of a, very older looking female that looks very type A or something. This perception exists, and we face it day in, day out. You can see it sometimes in people's eyes, but then it becomes a deterring factor in retention, because then it's microaggression and these other challenges emerge that I didn't even know there are these names for these factors, but you have to, face them and then continue strive to like overcome it. So building a pipeline and retaining women it's challenging from a cultural perspective. Not only does it require upskilling and constant learning, but you have to face with the culture, which is very like, if you talk about the Valley, it's very dude bro, like, yo, bro, I don't drink, so I don't go out. Then that becomes also another cultural norm. And COVID has fueled it, where, we are now at home, even much less of an opportunity and a lot more obligation from a family perspective, social, cultural norms perspective. So it's been challenging globally for a lot of cultures like India, and, because women are the natural caretakers, and it's just kind of fueled this whole retention issue.
So, this is really interesting. I'm hearing about all of these sort of issues and barriers that women may face. And there are certain stereotypes that people may have them. How do you combat that when you are applying for a job, which probably you have the experience for, but someone says you need 5 years of experience, so there's implicit bias involved. And I can tell from the chat that I watched earlier that there are a lot of young people here, some with no tech experience or emerging leaders with no tech experience that want to move into this field. How do they combat that? Perhaps, Nutan, I'll start with you.
So I know how people are currently trying to, at least, because they reach out to someone like me. Earlier, Tia was saying networking is a huge thing. So if you're even a slight bit skeptical about a job description, you should connect with somebody who may have some point of view. And most likely they will encourage you to either go acquire this additional skill while you learn this, so that even if you fail this time, you'll be prepared next time. They'll ask you questions. And so I think networking with people who have been there, done that, to give you a bit more custom advice, not just like, oh no, you should definitely apply because you don't know. Like, you can target your skill set, your energy in such a way that it like really works for fueling your passion instead of just like getting a job, because that will set you at the path of success. I look to Tia, actually. I'm sure, Tia, you've sort of faced advised folks to what to do in this case, and you were saying some of these things earlier.
And maybe, Nutan, I know that I'd asked you earlier to weigh in on that question too. How do women navigate around these barriers that they find?
I think what Kavya has said is very accurate, right? I think persistence is absolutely required. I myself, I think I will stand on a whole mountain of no's to get the yes that I am looking for, and there is a way. You just have to keep trying different approaches. I think that sponsorship is something that we don't do enough of in tech companies, certainly in the companies I've been in, and there's a statement that says women are over-mentored and under-sponsored, where sponsorship is you find somebody who believes in you, who has worked with you, and you use their network to move your career forward, right? They act as a sponsor for you. And I think, to me, that is far more powerful than finding a mentor, which is someone who will give you kind of third objective advice from the side, or even a coach who will give you advice by watching your behavior. I don't need people. After I'd worked 10 years, I didn't need people to give me objective advice. I could find that on the internet, and I didn't need people to say, oh, you could have done this or you could have done that differently. I mean, you are who you are. What I needed is, I need to know who you know, and I need you to make an introduction so that people will get the chance to talk to me and see how I do. So I think sponsorship is something that isn't done enough with women, and I think it can make a big difference. And some other things I think have to change just societally, and that will of course be slow, right? As mentioned, technical roles still carry a stereotype, right? Either the hard hat and the work boots, or the glasses, the junk food, and the computer screen. And that TV show, The Big Bang Theory, that set us back 10 years, women in tech. And people don't see the expansive roles. They don't see that teamwork and communication are as important than any technical knowledge.
Nushan, thank you for saying that about that show, because it drove me nuts. The stereotypes on that show just drove me nuts. So I just want to recognize that is beyond all the valuable things that you've said. Tia, talk to me about that idea of sponsorship and mentorship. How can women that are out there that are not, not having people step up and say, "I'll do that for you," how can they find mentors and sponsors?
I do think it starts with being comfortable with who you are and what you bring to the table. Because I think, folks like myself and everyone on this panel are super willing to jump in, have conversations, help women navigate. But the challenge is, if you just show up like, "Hey, I'd like to have a conversation with you," but you don't know what you want out of it, where you're going, it's very difficult to even land an opportunity for mentorship, much less an opportunity for guidance. And I often post these things I like to call pro tips on LinkedIn. And one day I posted something that said, not even Google Maps can help you navigate unless you give it some sense of where you're going. So that's step number one. Know what you want and set up these informational interviews with some sort of intent and be clear on what your desired outcomes are. Once you have those conversations, it's highly likely that you'll connect with someone that believes in you and is really passionate about what you're doing. And you can tell that based on the feedback you're getting from them, the types of questions that they're asking. And those are the relationships that you want to latch onto. You want to make sure they know what your journey looks like, what you're interested in, the things that you're pursuing, and get their feedback on what they're seeing in areas that you may not have visibility into. For example, well, where's the industry headed? Should I be pursuing this thing, or is a machine going to be doing my job 6 months before I even finish my education? And that's how you foster those relationships. I personally, and I'll be very transparent about this, I am much more willing to mentor someone than I am to sponsor someone, because sponsorship takes it to another level. Like, I'm putting my name on you saying, this is someone you should talk to. You really want this person on your team. And if I get that wrong, that limits opportunities for everyone coming behind that individual. So, be really intent on what it is that you want to do, clear about the advice that you want, but also bring some value. What is it about you that differentiates you from everyone else? Why would I want to put you in front of someone over everyone else that I'm mentoring? And if you can answer those questions for yourself, you can answer them for anyone that you talk to. And the way I sum that up is, yes, I'm in sales, but it's true. Even if you're not selling stuff, every call is a sales call. And you always want to make sure people are picking up what you're putting down. And you can't do that if you haven't defined it for yourself and if you don't believe it yourself.
Oh, I love that from Nutan, talking about the importance of sponsorships and mentorship, to you telling us how to actually go and find these people. And I think a lot of it is also knowing exactly what you want and be clear about letting people know. Susannah, let's talk about the other end. We've talked about the, trying to find mentors and sponsors, but we also know that we need visible role models that are out there, people that are critical to attracting a really diverse pipeline. The whole idea of, if you can see her, you can be her. We've all heard that. How has your leadership added to this?
So I didn't really realize how impactful it is to be a role model, especially in some specific settings and environments. So, however, I was a guest speaker at York University for third and fourth year university students for the emergency management side in their crisis communication course, when we could still see people face to face, before the COVID days and not everything is Zoom. And I was talking about how it is important to create your own brand within the security industry in order to stand out from your competition, as Tia was saying, because it is a very competitive market. As much as we would like to deny it, it is very competitive. And I provided advice, shared my experience, how it had benefited me, what they can do on LinkedIn to reap the benefits as well. And it was a lovely experience and presentation, and the audience reciprocated well. However, at the end is what shocked me. So I had about 4 to 6 female students that came up to me and telling me, wow, it is the first time that we see a young woman professional in the security industry that looks like you. I assume of a mixed background is what they meant. Since they usually see or are exposed to seasoned professionals, for instance. So for them, seeing someone like me that talks to them in the manner that I do, like casually, makes jokes, speaks their language, uses social media, their slang, they're like, they feel good about the industry. They're like, okay, it's like we won't be alone if we enter, let's say, at a young age again. And so someone that like me would be interested in mentoring them, for instance, as well. So since then, I have done over 30 guest engagements at universities and colleges, as well as in government and private events, and the feedback was the same. Because the panel that we have right now, that's not a usual type of panel. So it's awesome to be here. So I think it is crucial for us women and professionals in this big and diverse field of security to not only encourage, but also demonstrate in a role model type of role that the future generation, that they are welcomed, and that it is possible to have a fulfilling and rewarding career in our industry, and that we don't bite. So that's my 2 cents.
Well, I think, yeah, you just got three hand claps as a comment, which is a lot. Just not 1, 2, but 3, which is a lot from Kelsey. Kelsey loved that comment, and I saw a lot of nodding going on too. You know, I'm going to come back to talking. One of the concerns I have sometimes about when you don't have a diverse pipeline and when people decide to actually take themselves out of a particular sector is the amount of opportunity that they're missing. Like, look at this sector. This sector is booming. And when you have a particular demographic, whether it's women or women of color, actually self-select themselves out, they're missing out on this opportunity. So here's a question that I'm going to put to all of you. You know, what, and most importantly, where are the opportunities for women in cyber or in the tech spaces that you're in? Anutan, I'll start with you on that.
Okay, so I'll talk about my new role, which is a departure. Like in my new role, which is, you know, the Government of Canada IT shop at the most senior level, my peers are 50% women. They lead the CTO office, the design and delivery organizations. The CIO is a woman. Process improvement strategy is a woman. It's the first place I've worked with anything close to that mix, right? I'm familiar with what most people see, which is the women are 20% of the population, and it's stayed that way for 20 years. And the culture as a result is wonderful. So I would say at this point where we are now, there is nothing. There is not a single job that women can't do. And yeah, there may not be many role models, but they are there. And I do think that it is large companies and public institutions that have a responsibility to kind of lead in this area, because they can invest to improve diversity. And they're very large corporations, big employers. And it is an investment because culture change takes time, right? And it takes money. And so I think that kind of pursuing those programs, and then you can see the evidence in the presence of women at senior levels, it's a clear signal of no barriers. And of course, you know, individual, strong, outspoken women like my amazing colleagues on this panel, yes, they're essential role models, and will also show other women that no, there's no one space that women have to occupy. They're all open.
Kavya?
So, Manjula, I would want to draw attention to what's currently happening with the industry. We are moving from sort of Web 1.2 towards Web 3.0. In a more revolutionary, all the information is coming at you. You kind of have to make sense of it. And alongside, we've kind of discovered this whole new paradigm shift, which is like the metaverse, this immersive, spatialized form of the internet. which will have virtual, augmented, mixed reality. So when this, technological shift is happening right in front of our eyes, the current cybersecurity threats and jobs and all these kind of models, now we have not just the traditional cybersecurity challenges, but then there is these emerging challenges. So one of the ways could potentially be to sort of stay at the cutting edge, kind of like what, XR Safety Initiative does try to bring in folks from cybersecurity industry that are D&I focused, folks from XR industry. I call it XR, an umbrella term for extended reality that kind of combines virtual, augmented, mixed reality. So kind of bringing this together to form a coalition to educate and inform. And there are several organizations that are emerging across the globe. So this is something that I would really encourage people who are maybe solely looking into just like cybersecurity. There is this whole another set of challenges coming. And if you have any curiosity about these new emergences, then I think that's another area to look at. Why it is so important is because then we have this other mix of artificial intelligence algorithms. Mm-hmm. And we've not traditionally addressed like how algorithms make decisions about ourselves. Now these type of decisions will be perpetuated and will be amplified and increased when AI starts to make decisions about humans. And so these algorithmic biases are going to be baked in unless you're one of those people who's sitting in this closed room and be like, no, this will impact a hijabi woman negatively or somebody with a different color negatively. And we've seen that models across the board previously. So I think there are these very unique emerging technology challenges that intersect with cybersecurity that we have to address. I mean, if you look at the war happening right now, suddenly the whole model of like deep fakes, propaganda, and all of this is like so amplified and needs tremendous amount of addressing, both at the corporate level, at the policy level, and whichever organization you're in, you could at least do awareness activities like, hey, don't click on this link or whatever. So all this is fueling to be update your skills. Talk to people who are kind of looking into areas that might be interesting to you. And that's where a lot of jobs and a lot of like economic growth is going to come from, is what I'm observing.
Tia, what are the opportunities and where are they?
They are everywhere. I agree with both of the previous speakers. There are no limits. If you feel like there's a limitation, you're telling yourself an untruth. There's nothing that would limit a woman from being successful in tech or security in general. Again, back to the point I always make, you have to understand what works for you. What are you good at? What are you passionate about? Don't go off and become a pen tester because you saw a poster and someone looked good in a hoodie and everybody told you that's where you have to start. Figure out, how this industry relates to you if you're passionate about it. So I do agree fully with it's so broad, right? There's so many domains, and that's why folks have a hard time figuring out where to start because the options are plenty. But to Kavia's point, I am of the belief that there is a lot of opportunity that exists in the area where less people are. Business 101, if you're in a saturated market, either introduce another segment or create a new market. And I kind of approach my career that way. I don't want to be where everyone is. I want to be where everyone's going. Now, I do that for very different reasons than a newcomer to the industry would. I do that because I do like to be in the position of a thought leader, but because I can turn around and help those that are coming behind me level up faster. But as a newcomer to the industry, you have the opportunity to help drive and build knowledge that doesn't exist, right? And you have an impact on what the future of that segment of the industry looks like. So, that's scary for some people. I just like to jump and say, let's figure out what this thing is and make it awesome. But there still does exist plenty of opportunity in the traditional space as well.
One of a couple of questions that came up in the last session that I thought was interesting too, is this idea that there are people that don't have a tech background, either they're starting out in their careers or they're transitioning from something else, and they want to get an understanding of what some of the non-technology spaces could be or opportunities could be in cyber. is there, could you point that out to us, what some of those spaces could be? I'm going to let whoever thinks they have the answer put their hand up for that.
One thing could be, sorry, Susannah.
Yeah.
I was like, non-technical wise, like if you have writing skills, to make sense of stuff and communicate in a way that layperson understands, you could apply your writing skills to write blogs, articles. Technology understanding can be acquired slowly, but bringing it down to the level that everybody could potentially absorb this knowledge from a day-to-day, how to not click on a link, or basic awareness perspective, to all the way to a deep technical analysis in a more layman language. So that's an example of where you could use your communication skills, for example. Susannah?
Yeah, so I'm like the non-technical part, perfect. That's where I can contribute 100%. So there are different opportunities and paths that can be taken within the security and cybersecurity realm, and that I know for a fact. So I like what Tia said. It's do not limit yourself to only one area just because you have a non-technical background. So acquiring that background can always be an option. So instead of focusing on finding out which areas interest you more, then find out how to attain the required qualifications and designations. It's literally doing research and saying where you can contribute correctly. So, however, if this particular approach does not yet exist, and Tia, I'm going to repeat yourself as well, this might present an opportunity for you to create it or market it and contribute your own unique approach or expertise to the industry. But I would like to point out something else, going back to finding the skills or retaining women or attracting women within the field, and technical or non-technical. So there are many things that can be done to strengthen the pipeline to address the talent shortage within the cyber world and the security industry. So a strategy could be to not only approach professionals already in, like, for instance, the last year of university, but go even further back to high school, to be part of the high school career fairs and demonstrating that we have an exciting field. So like doing tabletop exercises, for instance, do physical activity to demonstrate them the beauty of our fields and how it is important. Because I always wanted a chaotic career, and I thought my only options were military, to become a police officer, or a crime detective. And at the end, we don't know what we don't know, and it is our responsibility to guide the next generation to realize that they have options. I don't know, I know we are in a limited time, and I can go on and on about this, but just kind of to conclude my statement is we need to give individuals, women, young men, everybody, a voice online, on social media, provide them with self-help books and guidance and online resources that will enable them to thrive within, let's say, cyber and the other security tech fields. So we need to create a safe space, and only then will we not only attract this talent, but also retain it.
So at this point, I'll just say thank you. Thank you, Susannah, by the way. I'll say that if there are any questions that anyone has, please pop them into the chat. I'd be more than happy to put them to our panel. And while we're waiting for those questions, since we're in the tail end of the panel here, I'll get all of you to weigh in on very quickly, if you could each take a minute, what strategies would you like to see to help grow that inclusive pipeline of women in cybersecurity and security in general? Nutan, I'll start with you. Oh, I think you're muted.
Sorry about that. One of the things that I think we need to look at is education, is technical and engineering education. Engineers are problem solvers and inventors. But I looked at my transcript, and I looked at that of my son, just in preparation for this, who just graduated from an engineering class, and nothing's changed. There are 12 math courses. I took 12 math courses where I sat alone in my room and did math problems, and I have used 0 of them. So education needs to change to reflect today's needs. Yeah, you need some technical knowledge to work in technology, and you need basic math, but you can have a fantastic career without differential equations and field theory. And this is changing, right? There's a greater emphasis on learning to design and design thinking practices. And I think we need to change completely engineering education. And I think we need to change it, starting the technical education in the high schools.
Okay, that is a really big ask. I love that. You've hit it out of the ballpark. We've got to change the way that engineers are educated. Kavya, what would you like to see?
And I'm trying it at my level to advise a few governments because we need a kind of a massive intervention. Good news is it is kind of happening. It may not be at the pace like earlier Tia said. It's not enough. It is not at the pace that it needs to be to bridge the gap. But we saw in 2020, first thing the Biden-Harris administration put out was like creating equity, creating accessibility, and now fairly recently even addressed like cybersecurity agenda. So I feel like at a global policy level, all the policymakers, organizations like Invest in Ottawa and all this, like what we are doing right now is brainstorming these very policies and ideas that can be adopted globally at a government level. That frees up resources, economic development resources, jobs related resources, but with a very clear emphasis that there is a need to create equity. There is the D&I, but you really need to give the person who's shorter a little bit of a ladder. Someone like me who doesn't have to take $100,000 loan to someday maybe have a career, maybe there is some kind of a boot camp scholarship opportunities where you can tell a nurse to, hey, take this, and now you can be maybe an XR professional or a cybersecurity professional or a privacy advocate, or all of that stuff. So there is a sense of equity that I would constantly push. I'm at the board of the University of New Haven, and instead of creating these 3 years of a master's degree, maybe there is a sort of a shorter degree with a less amount of money that enables a professional to just go out and start working with the kind of skill set that's required today. So those are areas, at the academic level, at the global policy level, and then just, big tech organizations can do a lot of this work where they make conscious effort to put corporate social responsibility money into these kinds of things where you can build these diverse pipelines. So those are a few areas that I feel intervention is needed, and it's happening, just not at the exact same pace as we would like.
The pace that you'd like. Susannah, 30 seconds or less, what would you like to see?
Perfect. So I will be the devil's advocate, and I want you to focus just on yourself, create your own brand and stick your course. I like what Nutan said, that there will be more no's, but keep pushing for that one yes that you need. And no matter what path you choose, you have to understand that there will be challenges and its own ups and downs, but at least you will try and you will not live with regrets. So focus on yourself, on your brand, and create your own voice.
Tia, last word goes to you. Actually, I do have a quick question after that last word to put to you that someone's asked, but 30 seconds or less, what would you like to see, Tia?
I can do that. I'll keep it fast. I think the industry needs to do a better job of identifying both transferable and complementary skills to roles in the industry. It's all of here's the hard skills we need for you to have to do this job. But if you say, if you are a great researcher or a great communicator, this would be the type of role you'd be interested in. And I think we could go a lot further. And then from a diversity perspective in general, I think we need to align on what that actually means, right? Because people tend to think diversity is what they think diversity is. And I check a lot of diversity boxes, and even I am blind to some of what's out there. So I could talk about that for 2 hours alone. So I'll stop there.
Okay, and this one's also 30 seconds or less. This is a question from Amruta. What position should I apply to enter into the cybersecurity field without any technical background? And what skills should I mention on my resume? Very quickly, Tia, because I think it's a very compelling question, probably echoes what some of the women in the audience are thinking.
Yeah, I mean, if it's a non-technical role that you're going for, like GRC, governance, risk, compliance, those are roles that don't require technical hands-on skills, but you'll learn a lot because you'll be interacting with a lot of those teams. And just to make it quick, the second point is something that's often overlooked is working directly for a cybersecurity vendor, because those organizations have human resources departments, they have marketing teams, they have all of these non-technical teams that support the organization. So you get your foot in the door, you learn the business, you skill up in the way of cybersecurity, and you're halfway there, right? Because an organization will be a lot more comfortable moving someone into a role that understands their business and currently works for them versus trying to bring someone in off the street. I hope that was 30 seconds.
Super helpful. And I want to say to my audience that you can probably find most of the people here on LinkedIn, probably on Twitter if you need to reach them and throw a question their way. Stella, Kavya, Nutan, Susannah, and Tia, thank you so much for your insights today. That felt like we ran a marathon together. We got so much squeezed in. I'm really appreciative that you're able to share your insights so frankly. Good luck to all of you as you work to move the dial. We'll now take a short break so everyone here can stretch their legs and hydrate and do a little bit of that before the final panel session of the day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Winterland, tell me all your secrets. Fill me in on your wildest moments. Colored trees, your yellow leaves move me. Dancing roofs, your painted red shakes the room. When I get there, I'll let my feet roll. When I get there, I'll break in your arms, I'll lose control. When I get there, I'll know the answer. Let me know when I get closer. Winterland, you're my sailing ship. Guide me in when you head for your trip. Right out of this wicked black and into bright sand. Straight toward the warm sun and into his hands. When I get there, I'll let my feet roll. When I get there, I'll break in your arms, I'll lose control. When I get there, I'll know the answer. Let me know when I get closer. Winterland, whisper in my ear, make my troubles all disappear. Way on this wicked black, I'll feel the side, right under the warm sun in his hands. When I get there, I'll let my feet roll. When I get there, I'll break in your arms, I'll lose control. When I get there, I'll know the answer. Let me know when I get closer. When I get closer. Let me know when I get closer. Open up the sky for me. When you say I'll dig much deeper, I will shout. Let me know when I get closer. Open up the sky for me. When you say I'll dig much deeper, I will shout. When I get there, I'll know the answer. Let me know when I get closer. When I get closer.
Welcome back, everyone. What a rich discussion that was. Thank you so much to all the panelists and speakers who have joined us today. It is truly an event filled with inspiration and actionable insight. And it's now my very great pleasure to welcome back to our virtual stage Sophia, who will host our final keynote panel discussion of the day. It will conclude with something incredibly interactive you will not want to miss. Sophia, thank you for coming back. I will hand the reins to you.
Thank you, girlfriend. Man, the session has been so fantastic, and to hear firsthand from the amazing leaders that we had, just between all of us, is not going to be a secret. I'm in love with Tia Hopkins. I think I need to take her out for dinner or two. Really looking forward to that. So it's a real pleasure to welcome everyone back after a health break. And also welcome these amazing women that will be joining us shortly to really bookend our fantastic event today. I'm so honored by the generosity, given their really busy schedule and given the recent global events. Their schedule literally blew up, and I'm really, really happy that they're here. We will also have 15 minutes towards the end that we will open up the Ask Me Anything component. So do drop your questions into the chat box, and we will try to get to as many questions as possible. And with that in mind, please welcome our esteemed women leaders to the stage. And I will take a moment to introduce each one of them very, very briefly. In no particular order, Sandra Whitley-Smearden, my good friend. And by the way, I'm so jealous. I shouldn't say I'm jealous because we're happy with our snow in Ottawa. But in California, I'm sure you're quite a little bit warmer than us. But Sandra, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And don't talk to me about sunshine, Sandra, because last time we met.
I'll keep that for a glass of wine sometime.
Definitely when I'm in your city, okay? In a few months. But, snow, we love snow up here. So Sandra Whitley-Smearden from Fortinet, really a huge supporter of women in cybersecurity. She's Senior Vice President of Marketing, Threat Intelligence, and Influencer Communications. She sits on many non-for-profit boards, including Women in Innovation. Thank you, Sandra. And a founding member of US 2020, which is a White House initiative to really improve STEM learning, hopefully, improve the pipeline for us, for all of us. Dinah Proctor, my dear friend from Ottawa. Are you in Ottawa, Dinah? Perfect. I'm sharing the cold weather with you. She's security sales, services sales leader for IBM. And this is the third time she's joined us. You've joined us every single year, which we're really, really honored. I think it's also prudent to note that Dinah was voted as top 20 of women in cybersecurity in 2020. It's such an honor, Dinah. Jeanette Manfra, wow, I look at your bio and I go, what have I done? Joining us from Google Cloud. Jeanette is from, her role is Senior Director of Risk and Compliance with Google Cloud, as I mentioned. Prior to Google, she has an interesting career within one of the U.S. federal government agency. She was Assistant Secretary for Cybersecurity and Infrastructure. Hopefully you will share your perspective on both lens now as we go through. But I'm also very pleased to share that you're a proud vet of the U.S. Army. So Jeanette, thank you for all your services and keeping all of us, including Canadians, safe. Innie and I have so much commonality. Both of us have a 3-generation household. We can share so much from that perspective. Innie comes us from IBM. She's a GM of Global Strategic Partnerships. She also co-chairs the IBM's Council on Diversity and really looking at issues that are related in terms of gender, diversity and inclusion for tech and cybersecurity. Really looking forward to your perspective, and obviously sits on many boards as well. Let's just start with the first question, and I'm going to start with you, Sandra. what has transpired the last few days has been quite challenging for all of us. And I think it adds complexity to the state of union of cybersecurity. Could you share with us your perspective on that, and how, and what are some of the threats and opportunities, and what do we have to do better from your perspective?
Yes, I would say that, you know, the last 2 years have been an extremely dynamic time for cybersecurity. We started off with the COVID pandemic and the move to work from anywhere, which was a big challenge for cybersecurity organizations as they, you know, now have to secure home networks and all the devices connected to them. Then we, you know, moved into, you know, a lot of the industry is dealing with this whole supply chain and components shortage and trying to get product to customers. That's another thing that's made a very complexity. And then, of course, the current tragic situation that's happening in Ukraine, which is incredibly sad, but is also creating a lot of challenges for cybersecurity organizations. There's definitely a much more heightened sense of awareness. We've seen things like ransomware increase over 1,000% in just the last 18 months. So this is already adding to a lot of challenges that we're facing organizations already, because we're seeing threats not only become more sophisticated, but they're accelerating in execution, and the time to respond is getting shorter. And all of this has been happening against this whole cybersecurity skills gap backdrop. In fact, we did a study and we saw that, you know, I think over 60, and actually the findings haven't been published, but over 60% of organizations have had at least 4 or 5 cyber attacks in the last 18 months. And between 70 and 80% attribute a skills shortage to at least one attack. So as security and to some extent, technology can help by automating and moving to more consolidation and all of those things. But the fact remains that the cybersecurity skills shortage is probably one of the biggest challenges for organizations. Now, the good news that we see, and we saw from this study, is that, you know, more than 80% of organizations have implemented more initiatives around inclusion and diversity. So I think there is definitely recognition that there's a huge role for minorities, underrepresented groups, to help with this challenge. And so that's good news, but I do think there's a lot more that we need to do, considering all of the macroeconomic challenges that we're facing today.
Thank you, Sandra. Dinah, I'm going to come to you from your perspective, because you're in the forefront, right? I mean, you deal with clients, you deal with from a, you know, in terms of staffing perspective. Share with us your perspective.
Yeah, I agree a lot with what Sandra was certainly mentioning. The recent threat index certainly being released on our 2021 was very, very interesting, especially with the global pandemic and the acceleration of our digital journeys on most of our clients. It really did emphasize a number of areas, the manufacturing of our supply chain being the most attacked industry in 2021, where ransomware was persisting as that main culprit. Certainly, as Sandra mentioned, that technology is enabling. But one of the things that we're recognizing is that technology without the direction to being open, transparent, foundationally assuming breach, is leading clients to places that aren't any better than where they are right now. There are a number of threats. Our threat actors are only becoming more financially successful, I guess is the right way to say that. As much as laws enforcement is making some really great headways and changing and pulling some of them down, they are laying the infrastructure. They're laying the infrastructure for additional compromises in the future. right? 146% increase in new Linux ransomware code. That didn't exist a year and a half ago. That Docker-focused, push expanding past just bots is really making it easier for our actors to leverage our cloud environments, which is our digital acceleration is driving to. So with all of that convergence coming in, bringing more people, more intelligence, more cohesiveness across our organizations has to be an area that we're seeing a lot of traction with and a lot of intent on how are we cohesively bringing and ensuring that not just our operational team and not just our threat hunters, but they're connected into our finance teams, they're connected into our development teams, into our joint ventures, into our supply chains. That cohesive entity is a lot of that open and transparent activity that we're seeing clients really benefit from right now.
Those are such incredible elements that really we need to focus on. Jeanette, I'm wondering whether along the same line, the same question, if you could provide us with both lens, because you've seen it on both sides, talking about the threat actors, but also the need of connecting the dots and the cohesiveness of it, because it is such a huge platform in terms of from a threat perspective, from a supply chain perspective, but from a demand perspective and opportunities is a broad platform. Could you narrow it down for us?
I will do my best. I think this is, it was already really touched on, but the trends of increased digital dependence with the complexity of the ecosystem, and then within that, areas where you've got single points of failure that aren't actually even known, right? Where you have entire industries that are dependent on the same, software library that's maintained by some, open source group. And there's a lot of that, and it's increasing. And this digital dependence is increasing quite a bit. And so on the flip side, sophisticated actors understand that, and they're exploiting that. And they're often able to find those points of dependence that can scale their attacks much quicker than an individual company can. In the U.S. government, and we partnered a lot with the Canadian government as well, so I know a lot of this is going on in Canada as well. But we started to try to change the conversation. There still needs to be a lot of good tactical information sharing, a lot of threat intelligence sharing, operational planning. All of that is really important. But we started to change the conversation to talk instead about national risk and sometimes international risks, actually in particular with the US and Canada, where you have a lot of shared infrastructure. And when you start to think about it from a risk conversation, not just a threat conversation, it broadens who participates and what you're thinking about in terms of consequences. And so I think, to me, that's the important thing that we continue to try to add to the conversation is don't over-focus on the threat. Really start from what are the consequences that you're trying to prevent. And as you have this increasing digital dependence and increasing complexity of the ecosystem, there's a lot of consequences that 5 years ago were completely unthinkable now. And the ability to just disrupt trust in public institutions, the ability to be able to create a hack of some sort or ransomware attack and then have gas shortages, even though the two weren't necessarily related. There was just a perception, right, that would happen. And so there's a lot of those scenarios. So to the extent that people can start focusing on, as a business, what are the consequences? What's my risk? How can a threat actor disrupt those? How can I focus my intelligence on understanding a threat actor's capability to disrupt or degrade any of those functions that I care about and cause those consequences? I think is really important. In particular, I would say it's really, really important to focus on software supply chain security. And it's been important for a really long time. It's only just in the last few years become much more of the national, international stage of people realizing how important it is. And coming together as industry and government so that we can understand what those risks are, both as companies and the open source community to really get a sense of what that is. I think also as a buyer of technology, it's really important to demand transparency into the software that you are putting into your systems. And we are seeing some increased asks for what does that look like? The US government has put out some executive orders that they're trying to drive increased software supply chain transparency, but really it comes down to, as a customer, as an owner of system, you want to build that into your risk modeling and understanding where are your dependencies and where is that, what's that chain of that software and that code, and how can you ensure that that integrity is carried throughout. So those would be my best attempt to try to narrow down a very complex set of issues.
Well done. Thank you so much. Just to carry on to the key elements that you touch on, Inhi, strategic partnership is so critical, especially when we're talking about cybersecurity, not just in terms of tech perspective, every single element concerning cyber. Jeanette talked about supply chain, integrity, security, and efficacy. Could you share from a State of Union type of perspective your outlook on this?
Absolutely. You know, when I think about one of the biggest aspects and challenges right now is to some degree trust. Right? Trust in institutions, trust in clarity of information, trust in sources. The technology world is actually one of the few areas where citizens and governments and institutions want to have greater trust. And the topic around, for example, digital sovereignty is rising amongst not only the vendors and the companies that are providing capabilities by geography, but also the industries. Meaning the companies that want to serve their citizens, their consumers, their ecosystems. And so this is a very hot topic, both at the board level, in the technology organizations, as well as by many employees. And one of the things that I've noticed, especially in my unique role to be able to interact with the largest technology partners in the world and platform providers, as well as the largest consulting companies in the world, is that trust is incredibly important. And that is not just the conversations and the relationships, but how is it codified in code, in the platforms, and in the applications that all of these different constituents are consuming. So I would say that is probably, there isn't a simple answer, by the way, for this, but I would say when I think about the State of the Union, there's a high level of conversation around digital sovereignty, especially in a highly polarized, politically polarized and geographically polarized sort of set of dialogues.
Sophia, if
so
I could add something.
Yeah, Sandra, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, just briefly. I think one of the other aspects is that the risk for cyber criminals continues to be very low. And this is where partnerships in the ecosystem and threat intelligence sharing is really extremely important. Fortinet is involved with the World Economic Forum's Center for Cybersecurity on a major initiative combating cybercrime. If you think about cybercrime, it's very different to other crimes. The crime may happen in one or two countries. It's being investigated in another. I mean, it's truly, there's no border, so it makes it very complicated. And traditional law enforcement is not as adverse as dealing with these types of challenges. So these types of initiatives where you have many different partners working together, including law enforcement, private business, and others, are really extremely important to fight this issue. I mean, I think less than 1% of crimes are ever retributed. So I can't overemphasize the importance of collaboration and partnerships across the board.
I think this is so clear, especially in your industry when it comes to cybersecurity, that not just in terms of strategic partnership, but collaboration, the trust level that Inhi was talking about, is because the impact, both micro and macro, is so profound. The other thing also is the intention of each stakeholders, especially the threat actors, are so fluid, and they're not being punished at all. It's really, really hard to even identify them. So in the spirit of global strategic partnerships, I'm going to pivot to the people piece. We spoke about the 3.5 million that Cybersecurity Ventures often cited. The numbers are going really, the multiplier is challenging. The other thing also is the recent White House Summit on Cybersecurity. I think all your CEOs were sitting next to President Biden, and each of your organization was committing and pledging to really try to be an agent of change and a solution maker in addressing this. And I'm going to go to you, Jeanette, first. From Google perspective, what is your commitment? What is your pledge? Number one. Number two is, what are you really focusing on? Because it's beyond just talent. These global initiatives, there's a higher calling than just talent.
Yeah, definitely. So for the White House Cybersecurity Summit, at that time we committed a fair amount of investment into the Open Source Security Foundation, as well as security work. But on talent in particular, we committed to training 100,000 Americans in our certificate program. But this is really a broader global commitment that we have to bringing in underrepresented groups, investing in those populations so that they have career paths. Perhaps they're not traditional career paths, as is often the case in underrepresented communities. Looking in low income areas where you can find that talent, that aptitude, but perhaps just didn't have that opportunity. And so this is something that, frankly, one of the things that attracted me to Google, and something that really care about, and you can see when you're here, the just the immense diversity, socioeconomic, ethnic, gender, diversity that you get here, and what that really is able to transform an organization, and having those different perspectives. So we've, like I said, we've made a lot of commitments specific to the US, but also globally, and really building out different programs like the Google Career Certificates program, to be able to touch people that don't have that traditional, I can go to a four-year college and get a computer science degree. Those are absolutely important candidates to have, but there's a whole range of capabilities and skills and talents that we want to bring. And so by investing in that population and then bringing them on the job, getting that training, we think it just makes sense for the company.
Thank you, Jeanette. Inheep from IBM, commitment and pledge, and also at the same time, if you could even touch on your very untraditional path to tech companies. I think that's really important for our attendees to hear.
Oh, thank you. Let me start off by something just really simple, which is cybersecurity and the challenges around security is a challenge for every country, entity, state around the world. So we need the best and brightest in every geographic location around the world engaging in this. And so not having 50% of the world's population not in the core of the problem solving is just a disservice to the importance in terms of all of us as global citizens. So I'll start there. The second piece too is when I think about the spectrum of both where the world is headed, it is not only a responsibility of tech companies. Every company in every industry and even government institutions are becoming technology companies themselves. And so they have to intentionally instrument and proactively think about security, privacy, identity as key elements in the design of the products and services that they deliver to the marketplace. And the risk posture and all of that has increased exponentially. Now, when I think about skills, I've had a very, as you said, a little bit unconventional career path. So I would be I would be not the traditional scripted, having studied a certain thing in university and then chosen the jobs. But, when I think about the workforce and the population, we need individuals that are constantly curious. The available subjects, disciplines, programming models were not available when I went to university. And the ones that were available then may not even be relevant now. So this is about having people with a growth mindset that are naturally curious and will learn and think about the intersection of culture, because even with trust and with security, it is as much about the culture of those states and communities in terms of the way they engage, communicate. There's cultural norms that are really unique, even in some of the forensic science aspects of security and privacy. So, my belief is there is so much opportunity. There is an abundance of demand, not enough supply, meaning not enough skilled professionals in the space, and especially skilled professionals with diverse backgrounds, whether it's in biology, whether it's chemistry, whether it's social science. There is the application of cyber technology and security technologies in business, in society, in healthcare, that we need all types of expertise involved.
Sandra, Inky mentioned, I think in one of your blogs, talent is evenly distributed, but opportunities are not. And it totally doesn't make sense that 50% of our populations are not involved in this. And the fact that, the stats is staggering, is less than 30% women participation in cyber and tech fields. And I know that Fortinet, very similar to Google and IBM, have pledged very aggressively. Could you share Fortinet's perspective on this? Sandra, you have to unmute.
I beg your pardon. You think I'd have learned by now. But it's definitely a huge commitment for Fortinet. And we have several initiatives underway. We did make a pledge to train 1 million people over a 5-year period. We're well on track to achieving that. At the beginning of COVID, we made all of our training, our network expert security training, free to everybody. It's definitely something that's extremely important, not just for Fortinet, but for our partners and our customers. I think we have several programs that are in place. When you think about, I think it's about 20% of women make up the workforce in cybersecurity. I think minorities are probably more, around 5 or 6%. So even lower. So that pledge that we made was not only to train, but to actually bring more minorities, including women, into the workforce. So we have many, many efforts that are designed around that. One of the things that there's a few things that we're seeing. One is that while cybersecurity or security leaders tend to move towards people who have certifications in training and cybersecurity, there are a lot of other attributes that are very important, and it's less about education. And this is where many different roles map well to cybersecurity. Things like situational awareness, the ability to work under pressure, to be more detailed, to focus on continuous learning. And we've seen a lot of that through our veterans program, where we train veterans to come into the industry. The other thing that we've had huge success, I was surprised about how much success we had with this initiative. And it actually, in the previous, one of the panelists mentioned this, and I think this, getting to minorities and women and young girls early, high school age, even before college, is incredibly important. And we introduced an intern program, which we really formalized, and we used that to bring more girls in and, for early in their college career. That's been hugely successful in exposing the industry to young girls, letting them see the different types of roles, because there is this idea that you have to have a computer science degree or you have to have a technical background. I certainly do not have that, and yet I've thrived in this industry, and I think it's one of the most dynamic industries in IT that I've ever worked in. So really getting, exposing them early, doing things, we create, pathways to different roles, because often it's really confusing how to get into cybersecurity. How do you do certain roles? So we've developed a lot of different pathways that provide steps on, what kind of training you need, what kind of role, how you get to that role. And then we're working on several initiatives right now that will allow us to expose students in high school. And this means even developing a new training program that is a bridge towards the more advanced training. So I think all of these types of things are really important, but I think things like getting to people early and exposing them to the industry, I think we all own it. Mentoring, I think teacher training on how to, all the things I've talked about, I happen through my youngest daughter to be now experiencing them. She's a computer science major at a very well-known university. She tells me all the time the things that she's experiencing. The, intimidation, a lot of the young men in our class were coding or in robotics and all different things before they ever got to college. Many of the girls sit in the back, and I ask her, well, what's the professor doing to include them more, to encourage? Not very little. So there's just so many, and I don't mean to be critical of, but there's just so many things that we can be doing better. And again, I think from when I started in cybersecurity 7 years ago, there's a lot more awareness around this, and I'm really encouraged by it. But I think we all need to own it, and we all need to be working together to do what we can to improve the situation.
Well said. I'm going to steal 5 minutes from the end because I think we have such a rich discussion, and I want to move on to the next one before we open up for a few questions. We'll try to get a few questions in before we wrap up at 4. Donna, Sandra, Jeanette, and Inhi talk about in terms of inclusion, talking about getting more women into cyber. I would want us to all reflect in terms of the importance of having women in leadership roles, not just in terms of cyber companies, but tech companies. And how does it impact, when you can see you can be a type of scenario in your organization, how do you attract and retain your women staff, your women community to stay in, but also at the same time to attract more. So let's do that. And I do want to make sure that we have a little bit of time to get Q&A in. So Dinah, your perspective?
Yeah, I think that's a brilliant approach to bring up in here, Sophia, because certainly we focus a lot on building our pipeline. We focus a lot on how to be bringing in early professionals, new grads, back into high school, elementary school, and really encouraging our ladies and our minorities to stay in math and to continue that approach and to continue to realize that there's a vast career. The leadership, I think, is quite frankly one of the harder parts, because retaining diversity, retaining is a slog. I'll say maybe an elephant in the room, but the cyber industry is very tough. It's a difficult industry in a lot of ways, because we have to be the masters of all, right? To be successful in the industry, there does have to be an awareness of data, network, infrastructure. What does cloud really mean? What does hybrid cloud mean? When I'm digitally accelerating a business, it sounds lovely, but what is it? So there's often a perception, and it holds people back. And I think, to your point, from a leadership perspective, breaking some of that barrier down and recognizing that there is some amazingly talented brains and intelligence needed in our industry. What we also need is strategy. What we also need is teamwork. And you brought up trust. Trust is a huge part of all of that, especially the last few years where we've been doing this and seeing people in not real life, seeing them through WebEx. Trust is not as easily brought. And ensuring that we are working with our partners, working with our clients, working with our employees, and building our team around a cohesive strategy takes more time. It takes empathy. It takes listening. It takes understanding, but also being visionary to where do we feel we need to go. And from a female in a leadership perspective, Sandra, I agree. I was that girl in the back room coding in university. I still feel it today. I don't know that I'm ever not going to. What it has taught me is, no pun intended in the industry, but resilience.
I agree.
Knowing a value and really at the end of the day shaking and saying, do I really need to be here? What am I bringing? Right. This is what I bring to the table. That might be accretive to somebody. It might be duplication. If it's duplication, then we're going to have an honest conversation and a direct conversation. But from a woman's perspective, I love working with fellow ladies that build each other up. There is nothing more powerful. There is nothing more just validating. That I'm seeing more and more. I don't know that I saw that 15 years ago. It was often, I felt I was put through a test. Every time I was brought into a meeting of did I earn the right to be there? We're getting better. We're slowly, but we're getting better. And I guess that would be one of my main messages is we as ladies in a position of leadership, doesn't matter what your title is. We all are in a position to maybe break down some of that perception that we can't be here and we shouldn't be at the table.
Completely agree with everything you said. I think, I think you brought up some great points. I definitely, I think as you get more senior in an organization, especially in cybersecurity, it is a tough industry. It becomes a little bit more isolating. The higher you're moving into leadership positions, there's not a lot of other women there for support or all of those things. So I think one of the things I think is really important is for women to support women and be there for. I make it my business to call out women in the organization who are smart, to make sure that they're getting the visibility that they need to, because often their voices are not heard amongst all of the others that are taking place.
Women supporting women is really important, but also at the same time too, really focus on confidence building and building their resiliency and the community of practice. Jeanette, could you share the importance of women leadership roles, given the fact that you do, I mean, for one time when you were with the US federal government, you were the top woman in cybersecurity, and now with your incredible work at Google, could you share your perspective on that?
Yeah, I mean, it is very important to have more women in these leadership positions and more women that are willing to get out there and mentor and show those young girls that Sandra was talking about that it's possible. I will say that I think the reason that we lose a lot of women to leadership is because the work is still not flexible enough. And so when women are ready to have their children and work can't be they can't continue to push their career and be a good mother and do those things that they want. I know I was, working at the White House when my son was a year old. That was a very difficult time. And so, I think, and this isn't just a cybersecurity technology industry thing, it's across a lot of different industries, but I think it's particularly strong in this industry, where it's sort of, hard charging, move fast, be aggressive. And so I think it's important for both women and men, frankly, and for even to allow men, it's okay to take paternity leave for a little while so that your wife can go back. Google actually does a really good job of being accepting of that, which I really appreciate, but it's not very pervasive. And so I think a lot of women, they get into their mid-career phase where they have to make hard choices and you start to lose them. And so I think it's really important as more women are in more senior leadership position to work with them to help figure out how can, if they do want to stay, how can they still have that career? Maybe they take a step back and they're not as hard charging, but they're still learning, they're still a part of it, and work with them to be flexible. I think the other thing you talked about, women supporting women, it's take a chance as a woman leader, and I'll say it to men leaders as well, take a chance on a young woman that may not have that traditional background. And I've done it many, many times. And some of the best people that I have working with me are people that I was just like, you know what? They've got something there. They're really good program manager. They really have a great insight into how people think. And there's just a lot of ways that you can bring people in. So take a chance on some of those women and then groom them. You have to have technical credibility to be successful in this field. I think that's something that a lot of times people gloss over. That doesn't mean you have to have your master's degree in computer science, but you do have to have technical credibility. So if you take that chance, you bring those folks in, but then you give them the training, you give them the guidance that they need, and encourage them to have that confidence. I tell a story a lot of a woman who used to work with me, who's just this amazing manager. And she did not have a technical background, but she had been in the technical environment for so long that she really understood this stuff. And every time the real deep threat hunters would get into something, and she would say, I'm not technical, but I have this question. And finally I pulled her aside and said, stop saying that. First of all, your questions are the most insightful ones that anybody has asked. These folks probably don't know what they're talking about either. They're just using a lot of jargon that makes it sound really good. And so stop immediately discrediting yourself. You understand the technical stuff just because you don't have the credential that other people may have. So those are some advice both for, I guess, my peers and for younger women just starting out.
Innie, I'm going to go to you, and then we're going to open up for at least one or two questions. I didn't prep you for this, but I think it's so appropriate and poignant to do this. When it comes to women in leadership position, women that looks like you and I, especially in terms of what have transpired the last few years, I think it's super important from a representation perspective. Could you share on that particular front and why it's important to not just in terms of have women in leadership position, but women in different flavor, different perspective, and how is appropriate and applicable to everyone, including to every industry, including cyber?
Yes, absolutely. Let me start by saying, what we're talking about is many, many decades, if not centuries, of systematic change that we're trying to fight through across multiple industries. And so it takes, I would say, clarity in terms of strategic planning and prioritization by companies and institutions to say, no, this is really important. I'm going to hold myself accountable by measuring it, and hold the management teams accountable by measuring it. And I'm talking about having very specific diversity and inclusion metrics for the institution at the most senior levels, meaning in the C-suite. There's an element of leadership development and career acceleration and training that has to happen as you do this, and that encompasses things like mentorship. It encompasses things like engagement and training people at different stages of your pipeline to ensure that you've got multiple generations to lead, not just in a point in time period to fill in sometimes tactically compositions of certain teams. One of the things that I just want to be very candid in light of not only the current public discourse, but what's happened over the last 2 years during COVID, is that you have to be incredibly tone deaf if you don't incorporate the discussions around race, racism, gender bias, whether it was Black Lives Matters, whether it's the Asian hate crimes, whether it's inability of access for those that are less privileged. You have to be really, when I say tone deaf, meaning if you are not having those conversations at your senior levels and incorporating it in at a conscious level for your own people, then you can't actually create the environment for your people to show up at their best. right? Because they're leaving the virtual office of the Zoom, and they may be living in city urban centers like San Francisco. And if you see crime in Chinatown, you can't avoid that reality as an employee. So I raise this because there's a level of thoughtfulness, empathy, but also understanding of, are there microaggressions that may help exist in different kind of team dynamics? And you can only increase those things with training and awareness and thoughtfulness and conversations and shared stories. And the biggest piece we've actually focused on, which I think is important to not just the area of cyber and security, is around male allyship, which is engaging and equipping men at all levels with actionable tools and advocating for women. And this, I think, is also equally important across every technology company and every institution.
I think we need another event just on male allyship because I know there's a lot of organizations that are doing extremely good work. Before I ask Sonia to join us on the main stage, let me just punch you one question with a very, very, it's direct and it's coming from the audiences. And I'll go to Sandra first. Is given your pledge, given your commitment, why is Fortinet a great place to work?
Fortinet, what I love about Fortinet, and I think I'm an example of this, is it's a company that moves very quickly and does not have a lot of bureaucracy. Employees here are empowered to be whatever they want to be. So, for example, I came in as heading up corporate communications. Today I have marketing, the threat intelligence team. That happened because I was supported in, if I saw a gap somewhere or if I had a skill set that I laughed at Jeanette with her example of the manager who said, I'm not technical. I do that with my threat intelligence team. I say, I'm not technical, but here's what I think. But I had skill sets that mapped to managing that team. And Fortinet is a company that embraces that. They don't get stuck on the typical, stereotypical way of doing things. So obviously, the company is a leader, it's an innovator, but in terms of the culture and the empowerment, that to me is why Fortinet has just been a great place to work. And I've learned a ton in this company. And I truly believe that believing in yourself, continuous learning and education beyond your own role and understanding the business will help you grow your career or accelerate your career. And Fortinet has allowed me to do that.
Jeanette, over to you. Why Google?
Well, two things. I would say one is really the culture. So the best advice I got from a mentor of mine as I was thinking about leaving the government was, you find a place to work where you love the culture and you love the team. And no matter what the work is, you will love it there. And so I think with Google, it has that empowerment that Sandra talked about. You see a problem, you can organize folks and do your best to get that problem solved. It's the second thing is the scale. When I was in the government, I was in the government for 20 years, loved it. But what I started to realize is that my ability to impact the global digital ecosystem was limited. And in coming to Google is the global reach that I have to improve security in the responsibility, frankly, that we have with such reach is tremendous, and it's a great opportunity, and it also gives me that same sense of mission that I had in the government.
Inhi, I know that IBM is extremely compelling from an employer's perspective because our incredible talent, Dinah Proctor, works there for the last so many years. So Inhi, why IBM?
I think let's start with Dinah. She represents IBM. I think one of the things people often forget, just given our 100+ years, is that IBM hasn't been just defined by the products and capabilities we've delivered. We've actually been defined by the variety of expertise of the IBMers themselves. And so in the security space, we have some of the best experts in terms of transformational thinking for consulting, as well as in terms of the technology and delivery capabilities. It's a great culture. You've got smart people that are focused on solving some of the hairiest, what I call it, the hairiest problems in the world, right? It's at the intersection of enterprise, society, and citizenship. And it's a trusted brand. And I think that matters a lot in this century.
Thank you so very much. Sandra, Jeanette, Inhi, when I'm in your neighborhood, we're going to have a drink, non-alcoholic for me, but you can go for alcohol and a nice meal. Thank you for your time. Dinah, looking forward to grabbing meal and coffee with you when it's a little bit warmer. My husband reminded me that we are 25 days to spring. So with that in mind, thank you so very much, especially when you're taking time from your very, very busy schedule. Both Sonia and I appreciate it tremendously. We wish you stay healthy, stay safe, and really looking forward to seeing you live. Thank you so much. Sonia, my girlfriend, I think we're going to wrap it up, yeah?
What a powerful day. Incredible to hear from so many leaders. Women are leading in this space, and we need more. We need more of all of the incredible women that were with us today. I have so many takeaways. I've scribbled pages of notes, pages.
Yeah. You know, one of the things that I thought was so insightful, and all of them, all the speakers were incredible. And as I mentioned, I'm in love with Tia. I'm going to reach out to her. This whole aspect about non-traditional pathways to very lucrative cybersecurity careers, or any of the tech careers. I thought it was so poignant to also share the fact that, you know, not having women's voice or perspective in cybersecurity is a risk, not just in terms of micro risk, but as a macro risk. You know, every single individuals were dynamic, and man, those hours went by fast. Don't you think, Sonia?
Incredibly quick. And, you know, it really spoke to the impact of ecosystem-based collaboration. We had so many different types of organizations and leaders who joined us today, from multinationals like the incredible panel you just led, small startups, medium-sized companies, government leaders at the ADM level, individual contributors, nonprofit, visionaries, and innovators from every walk of life. They all come together in different ways, and they're creating a powerful ecosystem for the current generation of women leaders in cyber, and they're charting a path and creating opportunity and impact for the next generation. It was so inspirational. This was a masterclass.
Let's just make sure that we kick the pandemic in the you-know-where, so then we can actually have a live event next year.
We will be together.
I think we need to return everyone back to the normal life, but it's been such a pleasure hosting this with you, my beautiful sister. And it's been such a learning experience for me as well.
Thank you so much, Sophia, for all of your leadership and contributions, to all of our speakers and to everyone who joined us today. We'll be sharing this broadly along with all the resources that were spoken about, so you can put them to work in your career path, in your leadership journey. Thank you so much. Stay safe, stay healthy. Our gratitude. Enjoy your evening. Thank you, everyone.